Imagine for a moment a small boat adrift on a vast and unpredictable ocean. This ocean is your life, and the boat, this fragile vessel, is your mind. There are days of breathtaking calm, when the water is a sheet of glass reflecting a gentle sun, and the journey feels effortless, full of purpose. But then, without warning, the sky darkens. The wind begins to howl, and the placid surface erupts into a violent chaos of towering waves. The boat is tossed and turned, taking on water, and in the heart of the storm, a sense of overwhelming powerlessness takes hold. You feel small, lost, and utterly at the mercy of forces far greater than yourself. This is not just a story of the sea, this is the story of the human condition. We are all sailors on this ocean. The storms are the relentless waves of expectation from our work and society, the chilling fog of our anxieties about the future, the undertow of past regrets that pulls us down. In our modern world, the storm feels constant. We are bombarded by information, pressured to be more, to achieve more, to have more. We feel perpetually behind, endlessly striving, and deeply, deeply tired. In response, we spend our lives searching for a safe harbor, a mythical island where the sun always shines and the waters are forever calm. We believe that if we can just get that promotion, find the perfect partner, or achieve a certain status, the storm will finally cease. But it never does. The core teaching of the great masters of the mind begins with a profound and liberating truth. The goal is not to find an ocean without waves. Such a place does not exist. The goal is not to command the ocean to be still, for that is a power we do not possess. The true path, the only path to unshakable peace, is to become a master sailor. There exists an ancient wisdom, a map charted by those who have navigated this same ocean for thousands of years. It is not a religion in the sense of blind faith, but a science of the mind, an art of living. It does not promise a life free from storms. Instead, it offers something far more valuable. It offers you the tools, the skills, and the deep understanding necessary to master the storms within. It teaches you how to strengthen your vessel, how to mend your sails, how to read the winds, and how to find the calm, quiet center in the very eye of the hurricane. This is the journey we are about to embark on together, a journey not to a different place, but to a different way of being. To begin our journey of becoming a master sailor, we must first have the courage to look at the sea as it truly is. We must turn our vessel to face the storm, not in an act of aggression, but in an act of radical acceptance. The ancient map of the mind calls this first, essential step the recognition of dukkha. This Pali word, dukkha, is often translated into English as suffering, but this single word is like trying to describe the entire ocean by pointing to a single wave. It is insufficient. Dukkha is not a pessimistic declaration that life is misery. It is a diagnosis, a clear and compassionate statement of our condition, offered by the greatest physician of the mind. A doctor cannot heal you without first identifying the illness, and we cannot find peace without first understanding the nature of our dis-ease. Dukkha encompasses the entire spectrum of dissatisfaction, from the most agonizing pain to the most subtle background hum of something being not quite right. It is the inherent friction that exists between our desires and the reality of a world that rarely conforms to them. To truly grasp this, we must look at the three forms, the three textures of these unavoidable storms. The first is the most obvious, the one we all know intimately. It is dukkha dukkha, the suffering of pain. This is the raw, visceral experience of unpleasantness. It is the sharp pain of a migraine, the chronic ache in an aging back, the fever of a debilitating illness. It is the grief that hollows out your chest when you lose a loved one, the sting of betrayal from a trusted friend, the searing anger at injustice, the bitter taste of failure and disappointment. This is the wave that crashes over the deck, drenching you in cold, undeniable reality. We spend an enormous amount of our life energy trying to avoid this form of dukkha. We build walls of comfort. We seek endless distractions. We numb ourselves with fleeting pleasures, all in an attempt to shield ourselves from the inevitable pain of being alive in a fragile mortal body. But the storm always finds a way in. To deny this reality is to live in a state of constant, low-grade fear, always bracing for the next blow, never truly at ease. The first step in our training is simply to acknowledge this pain, to see it without turning away, to admit, yes, this is here, this hurts, this is part of the journey. The second form of the storm is more subtle, and in many ways more pervasive. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the pain that arises from the fact that nothing lasts. Even our most cherished moments of happiness are fundamentally unstable. Think of the perfect golden sunset. Its beauty is breathtaking, but woven into that beauty is a thread of melancholy, because we know with absolute certainty that it is fading. The joy of a new romance is exhilarating, yet it carries within it the subtle fear of the day that passion might cool or the connection might break. The thrill of a hard-won success, a promotion or a creative achievement, is real, but it soon gives way to new pressures, the fear of losing what we've gained and the search for the next peak to conquer. This is the suffering of impermanence. The things we love will change, decay, or be lost. The people we cherish will leave us or die. Our own bodies, our thoughts, our feelings are in a constant state of flux. Our desperate attempt to cling to pleasant experiences, to freeze a moment in time, is like trying to hold a fistful of water. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers. This creates a deep underlying anxiety. It's the feeling that even on the calmest, sunniest day, we can't fully relax, because we know the weather will, without a doubt, turn. Our happiness becomes fragile, conditional, and always shadowed by the fear of its own ending. This is the treacherous current beneath a seemingly placid surface, always threatening to pull us under. The third form of dukkha is the deepest, the most fundamental. It is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the background static of dissatisfaction that is woven into the very fabric of our being as a separate, conditioned self. It is the inherent unreliability and stress of being a composite entity in a world of causes and conditions. It's the subtle, pervasive feeling that something is always missing, that we are not quite whole. It is the exhaustion of maintaining the ego, this constant project of propping up a sense of me and mine in a universe that is fundamentally selfless and interconnected. It is the low-grade stress of needing to feed, clothe, and protect a body that is destined to age and fail. It is the mental fatigue of a mind that is constantly chattering, judging, comparing, and worrying. Even in moments devoid of obvious pain or the loss of pleasure, this background hum of unsatisfactoriness remains. It is the fundamental tension of being a single, separate boat tossed on a vast, interconnected ocean. It is the very nature of the turbulent water itself. To fail to see this is to be forever puzzled by our own restlessness, forever seeking a solution on the surface, while the true problem lies in the depths. There is a powerful story that illustrates this journey of awakening to the truth of dukkha. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gautami. She lived a happy life, and her world was made perfect when she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. He was her sun, her moon, her entire universe. But one day, tragedy struck, and the child suddenly died. Kisa Gautami was consumed by a grief so absolute that it drove her mad. She refused to accept his death. Clasping the small, cold body to her chest, she went from house to house, desperately begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man, seeing her profound anguish, told her, "I cannot give you medicine for your child, but I know a physician who can. Go to the Buddha." Quo. Clinging to this last shred of hope, Kisa Gautami ran to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and explained her quest. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and said, "There is only one way to heal your son. You must bring me a single mustard seed." Kisa Gautami's heart soared with relief. A mustard seed, such a simple thing to find. But then the Buddha added a condition. You must bring it from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a husband, a parent, or a friend. Filled with renewed purpose, she began her search. At the first house, she asked for a mustard seed. Of course, the woman of the house said, "I will give you one." As the woman turned to get it, Kisa Gautami asked, "Have you ever lost a loved one in this house?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, lady," she replied, "you remind me of my deepest sorrow. My husband died just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gautami left. She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. One family had lost a daughter, another had lost a father, another had lost a beloved friend. Everyone was willing to give her a mustard seed, but no house was free from the touch of death. As the day wore on, she heard 100 stories of loss, 1,000 tales of grief. She began to realize that the living are few, but the dead are many. Her own unique, unbearable pain started to feel less like a solitary curse and more like a shared universal bond. The sharp, isolating edges of her grief began to soften as she connected with the silent sorrow behind every door. Finally, as dusk fell, Kisa Gautami sat by the roadside, watching the city lights flicker on and off. She understood. Her personal storm was part of the great ocean of human experience. She went to a charnel ground, gently laid her son down, and returned to the Buddha, empty-handed, but with a heart full of profound, quiet understanding. "Have you brought the mustard seed?" the Buddha asked. "No, Lord," she replied. "The lesson is learned. I thought my sorrow was my own, but sorrow is everywhere. It is the law of life." This is the first noble truth. It is not a morbid fascination with pain, but a courageous and liberating acceptance of reality. It is Kisa Gautami's final realization. To acknowledge the storm is not to surrender to it. It is the first essential step in learning to navigate it. It is the act of turning your boat to face the waves, so you are no longer caught by surprise, no longer capsized by the denial of what is. When we can look at our pain, our impermanence, and our fundamental dissatisfaction without flinching, a space opens up. The panic subsides, and a clear-eyed curiosity can arise. Now that we have dared to face the storm, now that we have named it dukkha, we must ask the most vital question of all. Where does its power come from? What is the fuel that gives this storm its relentless, driving energy? Having faced the storm, having had the courage to name the turbulent waters of our life dukkha, we are no longer drifting in blind panic. We are oriented. Acknowledging the problem is the first step, but it is the second step that truly ignites the flame of hope on this journey. This is the discovery that our suffering, our storm, has a specific, identifiable cause. It is not random. It is not a punishment from an external power. It is not an arbitrary feature of the universe. The second noble truth, known as samudaya, reveals the origin, the very fuel source of the storm. And this is the most optimistic news imaginable, because if a problem has a cause that can be understood, it also has a solution. The Buddha, in his role as the great physician, did not simply point to the illness. He identified the pathogen. He declared that the fundamental cause of our disease is an internal fire called tanha. Tanha is a Pali word often translated as desire, but its meaning is far more potent. It is thirst, it is craving, it is a deep, insistent, burning compulsion that arises within us. It is the engine of restlessness, the relentless drive that keeps the mind churning and the heart unsatisfied. It is this inner thirst, not the external world, that generates the energy for our emotional storms. The world simply presents objects, sounds, ideas, and sensations. It is our internal reaction, our craving for some, and our aversion to others that creates the friction, the dukkha. Tanha is the unseen wind that whips the calm waters of our mind into a raging fury. To master the storm, we must understand the nature of this wind, and it blows in three primary directions. The first, and most easily recognized, is kama tanha, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for a constant stream of agreeable experiences through our five senses and our mind. It is the craving for delicious food, for beautiful sights, for captivating music, for pleasant smells, for comforting touch. It is also the craving for pleasant thoughts, for daydreams, for intellectual stimulation. In our modern world, this form of thirst is amplified 1,000-fold. It is the endless scroll through social media feeds, seeking the next hit of validation in the form of a like or a positive comment. It is the binge-watching of shows, the constant search for the next distraction, the next peak experience. It is the logic of consumerism, the belief that the next purchase, the next gadget, the next vacation will finally deliver lasting satisfaction. The problem is not the pleasure itself. A beautiful song is beautiful. A delicious meal is delicious. The problem is the clinging, the desperate attachment to the pleasure. We want it to last forever, and we feel a deep sense of loss, frustration, and emptiness when it inevitably ends. This creates a cycle of dependency, a constant, hungry seeking that leaves us perpetually feeling that something is missing. We become ghosts at the feast of life, never truly present for the pleasure at hand because we are already worrying about its disappearance or seeking the next one. The second form of this thirst is deeper, and it fuels our grandest ambitions and our deepest insecurities. It is bhava tanha, the craving to be, the thirst for existence and becoming. This is the ego's primal drive for self-preservation and self-aggrandizement. It is the deep-seated desire to be someone, to have a solid, lasting, important identity. It manifests as the thirst for fame, for power, for wealth, for a legacy. It is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, a story in which we are the hero, and we crave for that story to continue indefinitely. This craving drives us to accumulate titles, accolades, and possessions not for their utility, but as extensions of our identity, as proof of our existence and worth. It is the root of comparison, the constant measuring of ourselves against others. It is the fear of being ordinary, of being a nobody, of being forgotten. This thirst is a primary cause of stress and anxiety, as the self we are trying to construct is by its very nature impermanent and unstable. We are trying to build a permanent fortress on shifting sands, and this craving for being is inextricably linked to the fear of its opposite, the profound terror of non-existence, of death. The third form of thirst is perhaps the most paradoxical. It is vibhava tanha, the craving for non-existence, for annihilation. When the pain of life becomes too intense, when the first kind of thirst for pleasure is constantly frustrated, and the second kind of thirst for becoming leads to crushing disappointment, a powerful aversion can arise. This is the desire to get rid of, to destroy, to not be. It is not a calm acceptance of the end of life, but a violent pushing away of painful experience. It can manifest in self-destructive behaviors, in addiction used as a tool of obliteration, in nihilism, and in the tragic despair of suicidal thoughts. It is the mind screaming, "I can't take this anymore," and craving the ultimate escape, but it is still a form of craving, a thirst for a specific outcome, the outcome of nothingness. It is born from the same root of misunderstanding as the other two, the belief that our happiness or peace depends on achieving a certain state, whether that state is pleasure, a powerful identity, or total oblivion. It is vital to understand that the path of mastery is not about eradicating all forms of desire. The map of the mind makes a crucial distinction between tanha, this unwholesome, clinging thirst, and chanda, which is a wholesome desire, a sincere aspiration, the desire to walk this path, the aspiration to be more compassionate, the intention to help others, the motivation to understand the truth. These are all forms of chanda. Chanda is the energy that moves us toward liberation. It is the desire to build a better boat. Tanha, on the other hand, is the desperate clinging to a piece of driftwood in the middle of the ocean, refusing to let go, even when it is pulling you under. One is an act of wisdom and empowerment. The other is an act of fear and enslavement. There is a simple yet profound parable that perfectly illustrates how tanha, this clinging thirst, is the true source of our entrapment. In parts of Asia, hunters have a clever method for catching monkeys. They take a gourd or a hollowed-out coconut and make a hole in it, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slide through. They chain the gourd to a stake driven deep into the ground. Then, inside the gourd, they place a handful of rice or some sweet nuts, a bait the monkey cannot resist. Soon enough, a monkey comes along. It smells the tempting bait, investigates the gourd, and slips its slender hand inside. It feels the rice and instinctively grasps it, making a tight fist. Now, the problem arises. The opening was large enough for an open hand, but it is too small for a clenched fist. The monkey pulls and pulls, it screeches and thrashes about in a panic, but it cannot get its hand out. It is trapped. But what is it that traps the monkey? It is not the gourd. It is not the chain. It is not the hunter who is still far away. The monkey is trapped by its own fist. It is enslaved by its own craving. The freedom of the monkey is, at every single moment, completely within its own power. All it has to do is open its hand, let go of the rice, and it can slip its hand out and run free. But its tanha, its burning thirst for that little handful of rice, is so powerful that it cannot bring itself to release its grip, and so it will remain there, a prisoner of its own desire until the hunter arrives. We are that monkey. The gourd is the world with all its tempting situations. The rice is the fleeting pleasure, the cherished opinion, the wounded pride, the stubborn grudge, the fixed identity that we refuse to release. We are trapped not by life, but by our own clinging mind. We pull and we struggle. We blame the world. We blame others. We lament our fate, all the while refusing to see that the key to our own cage is in our own hand. The storm of dukkha does not arise from the ether. It is fueled, moment by moment, by our clinging, by our thirst, by our refusal to simply open our hand. This discovery is revolutionary. It shifts the locus of control from the outside world to our own inner world. We are not helpless victims of the storm. We are unwittingly its creators. And this is the greatest news of all. For if we are the ones fueling the fire, then we are also the ones who can choose to stop. We can learn to let go of the rice. This knowledge transforms our entire quest. The question is no longer, how can I escape the storm? But, is it truly possible to extinguish this inner fire? Can this thirst be quenched, not by drinking, but by understanding? This leads us to the shore of the third noble truth, the incredible possibility of cessation. We have stood on the deck of our vessel and looked unflinchingly at the storm, acknowledging the pervasive reality of dukkha. We have ventured deep into the ship's engine room and identified the very fuel of the tempest, the burning, insatiable thirst of tanha. An honest sailor faced with this diagnosis might feel a sense of despair. If my own mind is the source of the storm, if my own craving is the fuel, am I doomed to be its prisoner forever? Am I destined to endlessly feed the fire that consumes me? It is here, at this critical juncture, that the ancient map reveals its most breathtaking feature. It points to a destination of unimaginable peace. The third noble truth, Nirodha, is the definitive and liberating answer to our fears. It is a declaration that the cessation of suffering is possible. The fire of craving can be extinguished. The storm can be mastered. Nirodha means cessation or ending. The state that results from this cessation is called nibbana or nirvana. This word is perhaps one of the most famous and most misunderstood in all of spiritual philosophy. When we hear nirvana, our minds, conditioned by a lifetime of seeking, immediately conjure images of a place. We imagine a celestial paradise, a golden heaven, a garden of eternal delights that one enters after death. But this is a profound misinterpretation. The Buddha was not a travel agent for the afterlife. He was a physician of the mind. Nirvana is not a location. It is a state of being. It is a psychological reality, a supreme liberation that is to be experienced right here, in this very life, in this very body. It is not something you go to, but something you realize. It is the discovery of a dimension of peace that has been present all along, obscured by the smoke of our inner fires. The literal meaning of nibbana is to extinguish or to blow out, like snuffing out a candle flame. What then is being extinguished? It is not life itself. It is not joy or love or our unique personality. What is extinguished are the three fires that we identified as the fuel of the storm. The fire of greed, that burning thirst for more. The fire of hatred and aversion, that angry pushing away of the unpleasant. And the fire of delusion, the fundamental ignorance of the true nature of reality that gives rise to the other two. When this fuel of tanha is no longer added, the conflagration of dukkha dies down. The storm, deprived of its energy source, subsides. And what is left is not a black, empty void. What is left is the natural state of the mind, luminous, clear, and profoundly peaceful. Because this state is so far beyond our ordinary conditioned experience, language struggles to describe it. It can only be pointed to with metaphors. Imagine you have had a raging fever your entire life. Your joints ache, your head pounds, your body is in a constant state of discomfort. You do not even know that this is sickness. You simply believe it is the nature of being alive. Then, one day, the fever breaks. The pain vanishes, the pounding stops, the discomfort dissolves. How would you describe this new state of health to someone who is still feverish? You could speak of absences, the absence of pain, the absence of ache, but health is so much more than that. It is a positive state of vitality, of ease, of clarity. Nirvana is that state of ultimate mental health. It is not just the absence of suffering, but the presence of a sublime and unshakable peace. This leads us to the most powerful metaphor of all for our journey as sailors, the eye of the storm. A hurricane is a terrifying spectacle of nature's power. The winds scream at hundreds of kilometers per hour, tearing everything apart. The rain falls in blinding sheets. The waves are monstrous. It is pure chaos. But at the absolute center of this swirling vortex of destruction, there is a place of uncanny calm. This is the eye. In the eye of the storm, the wind drops to a near whisper. The rain ceases. The sky above is often clear and blue. The peace is absolute, yet it is surrounded on all sides by the raging tempest. This is nirvana. To attain it does not mean that the world's storms will cease. Loss and gain, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, sickness and health, these winds will still blow. The ocean of life will still have its waves. But the one who has realized nirvana has found the eye of the storm within their own heart. They are no longer tossed about by the waves. They can witness the storm, engage with it, even feel its spray, but they are anchored in a center of profound stillness that the winds cannot touch. Their peace is no longer conditional. It does not depend on the weather. Another beautiful image is that of a cool, silent cave hidden behind a massive, thundering waterfall. The waterfall is the ceaseless roar of the world, the cascade of sensory experience, thoughts, and emotions. To stand before it is to be overwhelmed, deafened, and soaked by its power. But the wise one knows a hidden path. They learn to step through the violent curtain of water and enter the cave behind it. Inside, all is serene. The air is cool and still. The roar of the waterfall is now a distant, muted rumble. You are not separate from the world. You can still see it, still perceive it, but you are no longer battered by it. You have found a refuge. This refuge is not an escape from reality, but a vantage point of perfect clarity and safety within reality. It is the end of being a victim of life, and the beginning of being a serene observer of its dance. It is natural to feel a certain fear when confronting this idea. Does extinguishing the fires mean becoming a cold, passionless automaton? Does it mean the end of love, of art, of engagement? The answer is a resounding no. It is the end of selfish, clinging love, but it is the beginning of a boundless, universal compassion. A love that does not seek to possess. It is the end of neurotic, feverish passion, but it is the beginning of a calm, clear-eyed, and deeply effective engagement with the world. It is not the annihilation of the self, but the annihilation of the illusion of a separate, solid, permanent self. It is the moment the wave realizes it is not just a wave, but the entire ocean. Does the wave cease to exist? No, it simply understands its true nature, and in that understanding, all fear of its own rising and falling disappears. Nirodha is the North Star of our voyage. It is the proof that this path leads not just to coping better, but to a genuine and final liberation. It is the ultimate promise of the ancient map. It tells the monkey in the trap that freedom is not a myth. There is a state of being available to you where you are no longer a prisoner of your own craving. The storm has a cause, and that cause can be eliminated. The cessation of the storm is a real possibility. This truth transforms our entire endeavor from a grim struggle into a journey of profound hope and boundless potential. The existence of this calm, silent center changes everything. The diagnosis has been made, the cause identified, and now the cure has been declared possible. The final, most practical question hangs in the air, filled with a new sense of urgency and empowerment. If this place of peace exists, how do we get there? What is the chart, the compass, the set of instructions we must follow to navigate from the raging periphery of the storm into its calm and liberating eye? This is the call to action, the invitation to explore the fourth noble truth, the path itself. We have arrived at the very heart of our journey. We have confronted the reality of the storm. We have uncovered the inner thirst that fuels it, and we have glimpsed the serene, sunlit harbor of peace that is its cessation. A profound question now hangs in the air, a question filled with both hope and trepidation. This harbor of peace sounds wonderful, but how do I get there from here? How do I, in my small and battered boat, navigate these treacherous waters to reach that distant shore? It is here that the ancient wisdom unfurls its greatest gift. It does not simply point to a destination. It provides a detailed, practical, and time-tested map. This is the fourth noble truth, the path of the master sailor, known as Magga. It is the answer to the question, how? This path, called the Noble Eightfold Path, is not a set of rigid commandments to be followed out of fear, nor is it a philosophical theory to be debated. It is a set of skills to be cultivated, a way of life to be embodied. When you first hear of 8 components, it may sound daunting, like a long and arduous checklist. But this is not a linear ladder where you must perfect one step before moving to the next. Imagine instead a strong, reliable rope, a lifeline woven from 8 individual strands. Each strand is essential. Each strand intertwines with and strengthens all the others. Together, they form a single powerful tool that can pull you from the chaos of the storm to the safety of the shore. Or think of it as the complete toolkit of a master artisan. Not just a hammer or a saw, but a full set of instruments that, when used together with skill and understanding, can transform the rough, unseasoned timber of our mind into a masterpiece of freedom and clarity. To make this map easier to read, these 8 strands are woven into 3 larger bundles, 3 core trainings for any aspiring sailor. The first is Panya, or wisdom. This is the navigation system of your vessel, the compass and the chart. It is about seeing clearly, understanding the currents, and knowing your destination. The second is Sila, or ethical conduct. This is the integrity of the boat itself, the soundness of its hull. It is about ensuring your actions do not invite more water in or needlessly provoke the sea. The third is Samadhi, or mental discipline. This is the training of the sailor at the helm, cultivating the focus, stability, and unwavering calm needed to handle the craft in any weather. Let us now, together, unfold this map and look at each of its 8 precious strands. We begin with the bundle of wisdom, for without it, we are sailing blind. The first strand is right view, or samadhituch. This is the map itself. It is the clear seeing of reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. At its most fundamental level, it is the understanding of these very 4 noble truths: the reality of the storm, its cause, its possible end, and this very path to its end. It is the lens, polished by practice, through which we begin to see the universal laws of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self in every aspect of our lives. It replaces our distorted, self-centered map with a true and accurate one. Without right view, our efforts will be misguided, our intentions will be flawed, and our journey will simply lead us in circles. The second strand of wisdom is right intention, or sama sayun kappa. If right view is the map, right intention is setting the course. It is the conscious alignment of our heart's motivation with our destination. It is the why that fuels our journey. This intention has 3 beautiful facets. First, the intention of renunciation, which means the intention to let go of clinging, to release our white-knuckled grip on the objects of our craving. Second, the intention of goodwill, the cultivation of a heart of loving friendliness and kindness towards all beings, without exception. And third, the intention of harmlessness, or compassion, the active intention to not cause suffering to any living creature, including ourselves. Right intention ensures that our vessel is not just sailing, but sailing towards the harbor of peace and freedom for all. Next, we examine the bundle of ethical conduct, the integrity of our vessel. The third strand of the path is right speech, or samavaka. Our words have immense power. They can be soothing balms or sharp weapons. They can build bridges or dig chasms. Right speech is the skill of using this power wisely. It means abstaining from the 4 kinds of harmful speech. First, lying, and instead speaking the truth. Second, divisive speech that sets people against one another, and instead speaking in ways that promote harmony. Third, harsh or abusive speech, and instead speaking with kindness and gentleness. And fourth, idle chatter or gossip that wastes time and clouds the mind, and instead speaking words that are meaningful and purposeful. Right speech is about ensuring that the words leaving our mouth do not create new storms for ourselves or for others. The fourth strand is right action, or sammakamanta. This concerns our bodily actions. It is a commitment to living in a way that is peaceful and non-violent. At its core, it means observing three principles. First, abstaining from taking life, cultivating a reverence for all living beings. Second, abstaining from taking what is not given, or stealing, and instead practicing generosity and respect for the property of others. And third, abstaining from sexual misconduct, ensuring our sexual energy is expressed in a way that is consensual, kind, and does not cause harm to ourselves or anyone else. Right action is the practice of making our boat a safe place, a vessel that moves through the world with grace and integrity. The fifth strand is right livelihood, or samma ajiva. This strand extends our ethical practice into our work, the place we spend so much of our time and energy. It means earning a living in a profession that does not bring harm to the world. Traditionally, this meant avoiding business in weapons, in human beings, in meat production, in intoxicants, and in poisons. In a modern context, it means choosing work that is, as much as possible, aligned with our values of compassion and harmlessness. It is the recognition that every hour of our work can either support our journey to peace or actively contradict it. Right livelihood ensures the very voyage itself is honorable. Finally, we come to the third bundle, the training of the mind itself, mental discipline. The sixth strand is right effort, or samma vayama. This is the work of sailing, the conscious application of our energy. It is not a grim, joyless struggle, but a balanced and wise application of effort. This effort is fourfold: the effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states of mind from arising, the effort to abandon them if they have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome, positive states of mind that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and perfect those positive states once they are present. It is the gentle but firm guidance of our own mind, steering it away from the rocks of negativity and towards the open waters of clarity and kindness. The seventh strand is the very heart of the practice, right mindfulness, or samasati. This is the sailor on watch, the anchor of the mind. It is the skill of maintaining a continuous, non-judgmental awareness of what is happening in the present moment. This awareness is directed towards four foundations: our own body, our feelings and sensations as they arise and pass away, the state of our mind itself, and the fundamental principles of reality. Right mindfulness is what pulls us out of the trance of past regrets and future anxieties and anchors us in the only moment where life is actually lived, right now. It is the master skill that prevents our boat from being hijacked by the sudden squalls of thought and emotion. The eighth and final strand is right concentration, or samma samadhi. This is the steady hand of the master sailor on the tiller. It is the ability to unify the mind, to gather its scattered energies and bring it to a state of calm, focused, one-pointedness. This skill is primarily developed through the practice of formal meditation, where the mind is trained to rest upon a single object, like the breath, becoming increasingly stable and serene. A mind cultivated in right concentration is no longer a turbulent sea unto itself. It becomes a powerful, precise instrument, capable of holding steady in any weather and seeing into the deepest truths of existence. This is the map, the noble eightfold path in its entirety. It is not a random collection of rules, but a perfect, synergistic system. The practice of ethical conduct, sila, calms the waters of our life, reducing the external chaos. This calmer environment provides the ideal conditions for developing mental discipline, samadhi. and a mind that is calm, stable, and focused becomes the perfect platform for the arising of profound wisdom, panya. Each part supports and deepens every other part, creating an upward spiral of clarity, peace, and freedom. This is the complete blueprint for transforming our battered vessel into a craft capable of sailing any sea. Now, with the map unfolded before us, our true voyage begins. And like any great expedition, we must start by studying the terrain, by understanding the fundamental laws of the ocean we are sailing upon. Let us begin with the first and most observable law of this vast sea, the truth that everything, everywhere is in constant, unrelenting motion. With the great map of the path now unfolded before us, we are ready to begin the true work of the sailor, learning to read the sea, the first and most fundamental law of this vast ocean of existence. The terrain upon which our entire journey takes place is that it is never, ever still. Everything, from the grandest galaxy to the most fleeting thought, is in a state of constant, unrelenting flow. This is the universal law of anicca, or impermanence. To the mind that is unprepared, this truth can feel like a source of deep sadness and insecurity. But to the wise sailor, an intimate understanding of impermanence is not a threat, but the very key to freedom. It is the secret to navigating the waves with grace, skill, and a profound sense of peace. We see anicca on a grand scale all around us. We see it in the majestic cycle of the seasons, the inevitable turning of spring into summer, autumn, and winter. We see it in the daily arc of the sun, the rising into the brilliance of midday, followed by the gentle descent into twilight and darkness. Mountains that seem the very symbol of permanence are slowly but surely being worn down by wind and rain. Stars are born in fiery explosions and eventually burn out and die. Great empires rise, flourish, and inevitably crumble into dust, their mighty monuments becoming silent ruins for tourists to photograph. Our cities are in constant transformation, old buildings torn down, new ones erected. Intellectually, we know this. We accept that change is a feature of the world. But we often hold a secret, desperate hope that this universal law will somehow make an exception for us, for the things and the people that we hold dear. The practice of seeing impermanence truly begins when we turn our gaze away from the external world and onto our own intimate experience. Let us begin with the vessel itself, our body. We tend to think of our body as a solid, continuous thing that belongs to us. But in truth, it is not a noun. It is a verb. It is a dynamic process, a river of constant change. Millions of our cells are dying and being replaced at this very moment. The air you just inhaled is different from the air you are about to exhale. The food you ate yesterday is being transformed into energy, skin, hair, and bone. The body you have today is not the same body you had 7 years ago, or even 7 minutes ago. It ages, it gets sick, it heals, it strengthens, it weakens. The face that looks back at you from the mirror is a temporary collection of causes and conditions, a brief snapshot in a lifelong movie of transformation. To truly see the body as an ever-changing process, rather than a fixed possession, is to begin to loosen the grip of our vanity, our fear of aging, and our terror of sickness and death. Now, let us look even deeper into the very nature of our mind. Observe your feelings. A wave of joy arises, perhaps from a pleasant memory or a kind word from another. It feels wonderful, all-consuming. We instinctively cling to it, wanting it to stay forever, but it does not. It crests, and then it inevitably subsides, dissolving back into the ocean of the mind. A wave of sadness or frustration appears, perhaps from an unexpected difficulty. It feels heavy, unbearable. We instinctively resist it, pushing it away, desperate for it to end. But it too follows the same law. It arises, it peaks, and if we allow it to, it passes. No feeling is a permanent resident. They are all temporary visitors. The same is true of our thoughts. Sit quietly for just 1 minute and try to watch the flow of your mind. A thought about work appears, then it is replaced by a worry about a family member, which is then nudged aside by a plan for dinner, which then dissolves into a random line from a song. The mind is like a waterfall, a ceaseless cascade of thoughts, images, and internal chatter. They appear from nowhere. They exist for a moment, and they vanish. They are as insubstantial as clouds passing through the vast open sky of awareness. Here we arrive at the crucial insight. The source of our suffering is not change itself. Anicca is a neutral, universal law, like gravity. The river of change is not hostile. Our suffering arises from our resistance to the flow. It is the pain of trying to build a permanent dam in the middle of a flowing river. It is the friction we create when we cling to the pleasant, push away the unpleasant, and live in denial of the simple fact that all things are in flux. When we demand that our happiness last forever, when we expect our loved ones to never change, when we believe our health and youth are permanent possessions, we are setting ourselves up for inevitable disappointment. We are arguing with reality, and reality always wins. The great Thai meditation master Ajahn Chah taught this principle with a simple glass cup. He had a particular cup that he was fond of, and he would drink from it every day. One day, holding it up for his students, he said, "You see this cup? For me, this glass is already broken." He went on to explain that he enjoys the cup, he appreciates its form and function, and he takes good care of it. But in his mind, he constantly contemplates its true nature. He sees that it is made of fragile glass and that its future is to be shattered. He knows that one day, a gust of wind, a careless elbow, or simply the passage of time will cause it to fall to the ground and break into 1,000 pieces. Because he has already accepted this inevitable future, he is able to fully enjoy the cup in the present moment without clinging. And when the day finally comes that the cup slips from his hand and shatters on the floor, his mind is at peace. He simply says, "Of course." There is no shock, no rage, no despair. He does not suffer because he has been living with the truth of the cup's impermanence all along. This is the wisdom of Anicca. It is not a call to be morbid or detached. It is an invitation to love the world and our lives more deeply and more wisely. To love your partner, your children, your friends, knowing that your time together is precious and finite. To savor a moment of joy, knowing it is a fleeting gift. To endure a moment of sorrow, knowing that it too will pass. Seeing things as already broken does not make them less valuable. It makes them infinitely more precious. It replaces the anxious, clinging grip of ownership with the gentle, open-handed appreciation of a temporary steward. Ultimately, the law of impermanence is a profound source of hope. Because things change, healing is possible. Because emotions are transient, our current sadness is not a life sentence. Because situations evolve, we are not permanently trapped in our present difficulties. Change is what allows for learning, for growth, for forgiveness, and for transformation. If everything were permanent and fixed, we would be prisoners of our past mistakes forever. Liberation itself would be impossible. Anicca is the very engine of freedom. It is the law that guarantees that a different future, a different way of being, is always possible. It is the ocean's current that, if we learn to work with it, can carry our vessel all the way to the shores of Nibbana. And so, as we sit here, observing this great, flowing reality, a deeper question begins to surface. We have seen that the world around us is an ever-changing sea. We have seen that our own body is a river of ceaseless transformation. We have seen that our thoughts and feelings are like passing clouds. Everything we can perceive, inside and out, is in a state of flux. This leads us to the most radical and penetrating inquiry of all. In this vast ocean of impermanence, who or what is the one doing the seeing? If everything is changing, what is this I, this self that we feel is so solid, so constant, so in charge? Is the sailor too just another fleeting wave upon the face of the deep? We have sailed our vessel into the deep waters of Anika, the universal sea of impermanence, and we have seen that everything we can perceive is in constant motion. Our body, our feelings, our thoughts all are fleeting waves on a vast ocean. This profound observation forces us to ask the most fundamental question of our existence. If everything is in flux, who is the unchanging sailor? Who is this I that stands at the center of my universe? The one who feels, who thinks, who owns my experiences. The journey into the heart of wisdom now asks us to take the most courageous step of all, to turn our analytical gaze upon the captain of the ship itself. This is the teaching of anatta, or not self, and while it may at first seem frightening, it is the doorway to the most profound liberation imaginable. At the very core of our being, there is a deeply ingrained feeling, an assumption that we have never questioned. It is the feeling that I am. I am a solid, continuous, independent self, a thinker of my thoughts, a feeler of my feelings, the unified commander of my body and mind. This I, or ego, feels like the most real thing in the world. The Buddha's teaching invites us to investigate this feeling, not to accept it on blind faith. It asks us to take this sense of self and place it under a microscope to see if we can find what it's actually made of. The method for this investigation is the analysis of our experience into what are called the 5 aggregates, or the 5 heaps. These are the 5 components that make up what we call a person. If a separate, permanent self exists, it must be found in one of these, or somewhere outside of them. Let us, like a curious mechanic, take our own machinery apart and inspect the pieces. The first aggregate is form, or rupa. This is our physical body with all its parts and processes. We just explored this in our look at impermanence. The body is a ceaseless river of change. It is composed of elements that are borrowed, not owned. Is this body me? If you lose a limb in an accident, are you less of a you? If your cells are completely different from 7 years ago, are you a different person? Most of us would agree that while we have a body, we are not our body. The body is the vessel, but it is not the captain, so the self is not found here. The second aggregate is feeling, or Vedana. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. They are categorized into 3 types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day is pleasant. A sudden, loud noise is unpleasant. The feeling of your clothes against your skin might be neutral. Are you your feelings? If you are your happiness, who are you when you are overcome with sadness? Feelings are as fickle and transient as the weather. They are impersonal events, arising and passing away based on conditions. To build our identity on something so unstable is to build a house on the surface of the ocean. The self is not found in feeling. The third aggregate is perception, or sanya. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, labels, and categorizes our experience. It's the process that says blue, tree, dog, danger, safe. It pieces together raw sensory data into coherent concepts. But is this process me? Perception is also conditioned and unreliable. 2 people can look at the same piece of modern art, and one perceives it as beautiful while the other perceives it as ugly. A shadow at night can be perceived as a threat, only to be revealed as a coat on a chair in the morning. This labeling function is a useful tool, like the ship's radar, but it is not the commander. The self is not found in perception. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, or sayunkara. This is a very broad and important category. It includes all of our thoughts, ideas, opinions, beliefs, prejudices, intentions, volitions, and habits. For many of us, this is where we believe the I resides. I am my thoughts. I am my political beliefs. I am my moral code. But take a close look. Are you the author of your thoughts? Or do they simply appear in your consciousness, uninvited? Have your opinions and beliefs not changed dramatically over the course of your life? This aggregate is a chaotic whirlwind of conditioned mental activity, a babble of voices from our past, our culture, and our biology. To identify with this torrent is to be a slave to every passing mental breeze. The self is not found in this whirlwind of mental formations. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the fundamental quality of awareness itself, the light that illuminates experience. It is the seeing of a sight, the hearing of a sound, the knowing of a thought. But is this core awareness the permanent I? The Buddha pointed out that consciousness is not a single monolithic entity. It is dependent and specific. Seeing consciousness arises only when there is an I and a visible object. Hearing consciousness arises only when there is an ear and a sound. It flickers in and out of existence with every moment of experience, dependent on conditions. It is the light, but there is no evidence of a permanent, unchanging lighthouse keeper who is in charge of it. The self is not found in consciousness. So we have examined the 5 heaps. We have looked at our body, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental activities, and our consciousness. We have searched high and low, and we cannot find a separate, solid, continuous self anywhere. The shocking but liberating conclusion is that there is no captain of the ship. The self, the ego, the I that we cherish and defend so fiercely, is an illusion. It is a convenient name, a useful convention, like a nickname we give to the dynamic, impersonal process of these 5 aggregates working together. There is a famous dialogue from an ancient text that illustrates this perfectly. A sharp-witted Greek king named Milinda sought to test the wisdom of a Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king asked the sage his name. Nagasena replied, "I am known as Nagasena, your majesty. But this is only a designation, a name. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king was incredulous. He challenged the sage. "If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food? If I were to have you killed, there would be no murder." The king then proceeded to deconstruct Nagasena, asking if his hair was Nagasena, or his body, or his feelings. Nagasena replied, "No to each." The king triumphantly declared that he could not find Nagasena at all. Then, the sage calmly turned the tables. He asked the king, "How did you arrive here today?" "By chariot," the king replied. "Excellent," said Nagasena. "Please show me this chariot. Is the pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Are the wheels, the chariot, the axle, the frame?" To each question, the king had to answer no. Finally, Nagasena asked, "Then is the chariot something other than these parts combined?" "No, venerable sir." Nagasena then smiled and delivered his point. "Your Majesty, just as chariot is simply a convenient name for the assembly of its parts, Nagasena is a convenient name for the assembly of these 5 aggregates. In the ultimate sense, there is no permanent chariot, and there is no permanent Nagasena. This is not a nihilistic teaching that we do not exist. It is a precise teaching that we do not exist in the way we think we do. We are not a noun, we are a verb. We are not a thing. And this is the best news in the world. Why? Because this phantom self, this illusory captain, is the source of almost all our suffering. It is the I that feels wounded by criticism. It is the me that is consumed by greed and jealousy. It is the mind that creates conflict and war. It is this fragile ego that we spend our entire lives defending, promoting, and gratifying, a task that is both exhausting and doomed to fail. To see through this illusion is not to be annihilated. It is to lay down the heaviest burden you have ever carried. It is the end of the profound loneliness that comes from feeling separate from the rest of the universe. To understand impermanence and not self on an intellectual level is the first step. It is to read the words on the map. But the goal of this journey is not to be a great scholar of maps. It is to be a master sailor of the sea. To do that, we need to move from intellectual understanding to direct experience. We need a tool, a practical method for observing these processes of change and selflessness as they unfold in our own experience, from moment to moment. We need a way to watch the aggregates arise and pass away without getting swept up by them. This central, indispensable tool of the path is the practice of mindfulness. We have journeyed far into the philosophical depths of the sailor's map, exploring the vast, challenging terrains of impermanence and not self. We have intellectually deconstructed our vessel and found no permanent captain at the helm. These are profound, life-altering insights. But if they remain only as beautiful ideas, they are like a map that is never used. The critical question becomes, how do we transform this philosophical understanding into a lived, direct experience? How do we learn to see the ever-changing flow of the 5 aggregates for ourselves, moment by moment, instead of just believing they are there? The answer lies in the cultivation of a specific, practical skill. This skill is the 7th strand of the path, the indispensable tool of the master sailor. It is the anchor of awareness known as sati, or mindfulness. In the West, mindfulness has become a popular buzzword, often associated with stress reduction or relaxation. While it can lead to these benefits, its true purpose on this path is far deeper. It is a tool for radical insight and liberation. The most classic definition is beautifully simple. Mindfulness is paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack this, for every word is a crucial instruction. Paying attention on purpose means this is not a passive zoning out. It is an active, intentional directing of our awareness. In the present moment means we are consciously anchoring our mind right here, right now, rather than allowing it to be lost in the ghosts of the past or the phantoms of the future. This is the only moment where life ever happens. The final part, non-judgmentally, is perhaps the most difficult and the most revolutionary. It means observing our experience with a gentle, open, and curious attitude. It is seeing what is present without immediately wrapping it in layers of, I like this, I hate this, this is good, this is bad, I need more of this, I want this to go away. It is a radical act of allowing things to be as they are. It is equally important to understand what mindfulness is not. Mindfulness is not about stopping your thoughts or emptying your mind. The mind produces thoughts, that is its nature. Trying to stop them is like trying to stop the ocean from producing waves of futile and frustrating battle. The practice is not to stop the thoughts, but to change your relationship to them. You learn to sit on the bank of the river of your mind and watch the thoughts float by, without needing to jump in and be carried away by every single one. Mindfulness is also not necessarily a relaxation technique. While calm is a frequent and wonderful side effect, the goal is clarity. Sometimes, when you become mindful, you will not find peace. You will find restlessness, boredom, or grief. The practice is to be aware of that restlessness, to be mindful of that boredom, without judgment. This is how you come to understand them and rob them of their power over you. The core of the practice is the cultivation of an anchor. The mind, left to its own devices, is like a small boat without an anchor in a restless sea, constantly drifting on the currents of random thought. The anchor does not stop the sea from moving, but it keeps the boat steady in one place. Our most reliable and ever-present anchor is the breath. Let us try a taste of this right now, wherever you are. You do not need to change your posture or close your eyes unless you want to. Simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of your breathing. Feel the air as it enters your nostrils, perhaps cool on the way in and slightly warmer on the way out. Or you can place your attention on your abdomen, feeling its gentle rise with each inhalation and its gentle fall with each exhalation. Do not try to control the breath, just let it be natural. Your only job is to rest your awareness on these simple, physical sensations. Now, within a few seconds, you will notice something inevitable. Your mind will wander, a thought will arise, a sound will distract you, a plan for tomorrow will hijack your attention. The moment you notice this that is the moment of mindfulness. Your mind has drifted. There is no need for scolding or frustration. This is not a failure. It is the practice itself. With the same gentle kindness you would use to guide a lost puppy, you simply acknowledge where the mind went, and then gently, deliberately, escort your attention back to the anchor of the breath, back to the rising and falling of the abdomen. That is all. This return, this act of coming back, again and again and again, is the bicep curl for your attention muscle. Each time you do it, you are strengthening your capacity for presence and weakening the habit of distraction. Over time, you can expand your anchor to include the entire body, feeling the points of contact with your chair, the temperature of the air, any sensations of tingling or pressure. You are grounding yourself in the undeniable reality of the present moment. The great tightrope walker is a perfect metaphor for the mindful life. Imagine a wire stretched between two tall buildings. To cross it is to navigate the path of life. The walker cannot afford to look down at the dizzying height, for that is to be lost in fear. They cannot be consumed by thoughts of past missteps or a previous fall. They also cannot be fixated on the destination, the other building, for that will cause them to lose focus on the task at hand. Their very life depends on bringing their entire being, their complete and total attention, to the immediate, present reality. The feeling of the rope beneath their foot, the subtle shifts in the wind, the precise placement of the next step. Mindfulness is the skill of the tightrope walker. It is bringing our full attention to the one step of our life that is actually happening. This breath, this conversation, this bite of food. This is not a practice confined to a meditation cushion. It is a skill that transforms every aspect of daily life. When you listen to a friend, you can practice mindful listening, giving them the full gift of your presence, instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. This alone can heal relationships. You can practice mindful eating, truly tasting and appreciating your food, which enhances pleasure and connects you to the miracle of nourishment. When a difficult emotion like anger arises, mindfulness creates a crucial space. Instead of being completely identified with the anger, I am angry, you can observe it with curiosity. There is anger here. This is what it feels like in my body. In that space between the stimulus and your reaction, you find freedom. You find the power to choose a wise response instead of being a slave to an impulsive reaction. It is in this space that the master sailor works. It is here that we learn to steer the ship rather than being tossed around by its every lurch. Mindfulness is the anchor that holds us steady, but it is also the clear glass through which we can finally see the inner workings of our own minds, witnessing anicca and anatta not as theories, but as living realities. But like any profound skill, it requires dedicated training. To become a great musician, you must practice your scales. To become a master sailor, you need time on the water. We need a gymnasium for the mind, a dedicated space and time to systematically cultivate this power of attention. This formal training ground is the practice of meditation. We have discovered the anchor of mindfulness, the essential skill of keeping our vessel steady in the present moment amidst the ocean's swell. It is a capacity we can practice anywhere, at any time while washing the dishes, walking to work, or listening to a friend. But to truly become a master sailor, capable of navigating the fiercest hurricanes, we need more than just casual practice. A concert pianist cannot prepare for a symphony by occasionally tapping on a keyboard. They need dedicated, focused hours of practice. An elite athlete cannot reach their peak by simply staying active. They need a structured training regimen in the gym. In the same way, to cultivate a mind that is truly stable, clear, and insightful, we need a dedicated training ground. We need a gymnasium for the mind. This is the role of formal meditation, the eighth strand of the path, known as samadhi. Samadhi is a word that encompasses concentration, stability, and the collected, unified state of mind that arises from dedicated mental training. This is where we deliberately set aside time to sit down and work with the mind, to strengthen the muscle of attention and deepen our capacity for awareness. This might sound intimidating, but the practice itself is profoundly simple. It begins with creating a space for yourself. Find a quiet corner in your home and a consistent time each day, perhaps 15 minutes in the morning, that you can dedicate to this appointment with yourself. This simple act of creating a ritual signals to your mind that you are about to engage in something important and intentional. The foundation of the practice is your posture. The goal is not to force your body into a painful, exotic position, but to find a posture that embodies both dignity and ease. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, with your legs crossed comfortably in a way that allows your knees to be lower than your hips. You can use a small meditation bench, or you can simply sit upright in a straight-back chair, with your feet planted firmly and flatly on the ground. The key is to keep your spine straight but not stiff, like a stack of coins, allowing energy to flow freely. Your hands can rest comfortably in your lap, and your eyes can be gently closed or held in a soft, unfocused gaze towards the floor a few feet in front of you. This posture of alertness and relaxation is the physical expression of the mental state we are cultivating. Within the world of meditation, there are two primary practices that work together like the two wings of a bird. Both are needed to fly. The first is called samatha, which means calm abiding. This is concentration meditation. The goal of samatha is to tame the wild, scattered energy of the mind and bring it to a state of calm, focused stillness. We do this by training the mind to rest on a single object, most commonly the breath. Just as we practiced in our exploration of mindfulness, we place our attention on the sensation of breathing, and whenever the mind wanders, we gently guide it back. Imagine holding a glass of water taken from a muddy pond. It is cloudy, murky, and you cannot see through it. If you shake the glass, it only becomes more opaque. But if you set the glass down and allow it to be still, the particles of mud will slowly, naturally settle to the bottom. Soon, the water becomes perfectly clear. Samatha practice is the act of setting the glass of your mind down. The breath is the point of stillness you focus on. Each time you return to it, you are allowing the mud of your restless thoughts to settle. This practice builds the essential mental muscle of concentration. It creates a mind that is less reactive, more stable, and capable of sustained attention. Once the water in the glass is clear, you can now see what lies within it. This is where the second wing of meditation, vipassana, comes into play. Vipassana means insight or clear seeing. This is the practice of using the calm, concentrated mind developed through samatha to investigate the nature of your own experience. With this new, sharpened lens of attention, you turn your gaze inward and observe, with penetrating clarity, the truth of reality as it unfolds moment by moment. You see for yourself the truth of anicca, watching thoughts and sensations arise and pass away like bubbles. you see for yourself the truth of anatta, looking for a solid self in the flow of experience and finding none. Vipassana is not about achieving a blissful state. It is about seeing the truth that liberates. Samatha builds the powerful microscope. Vipassana is using that microscope to make profound discoveries about the nature of the mind and reality. For the beginning sailor, the sea of meditation can often feel choppy. It is essential to know the common obstacles known as the 5 hindrances, not as signs of failure, but as opportunities for practice. The first is restlessness and worry, the infamous monkey mind. Your mind will jump from thought to thought, plan to plan. This is normal. Your job is not to fight the monkey, but to befriend it. Acknowledge its presence with a mental note like thinking or worrying, and then gently guide your attention back to the breath. The second is drowsiness, a dull, sleepy state of mind. When this arises, you can straighten your spine, brighten your attention, or even open your eyes for a few moments. The practice is to be mindful of the sleepiness without being consumed by it. You may also encounter aversion, a feeling of annoyance or frustration with a sound, a physical pain, or the practice itself. Again, the instruction is to meet this with gentle awareness, noting annoyance and returning to your anchor. The opposite can also arise, craving for a pleasant thought or a fantasy. The practice is the same. Note it, let it go, and return. Finally, you may encounter doubt, the nagging voice that asks, "Am I doing this right? Is this even working?" See this doubt as just one more thought, another cloud in the sky. Acknowledge its presence and return your focus to the direct physical sensation of breathing. The spirit you bring to this training ground is more important than any technique. Above all, you must be kind to yourself. You are training a wild mind that has been allowed to run free for decades. You would not beat a puppy for wandering off. You would gently guide it back. You must treat your own mind with this same boundless patience and self-compassion. And secondly, consistency is far more powerful than duration. A steady, dedicated practice of 10 or 15 minutes every single day will build more momentum and create more lasting change than a heroic 2-hour sit you only do once a month. It is the daily act of returning to the cushion, the daily commitment to this inner work, that slowly but surely transforms the very structure of your mind. Meditation is not an escape from life, it is a deep dive into it. It is the laboratory where you can study the human condition in the only place it can truly be studied, within yourself. It is the patient, systematic training that makes mindfulness in daily life possible. Through the calming practice of samatha, the muddy water settles. Through the investigative practice of vipassana, we can then see the jewels of insight sparkling at the bottom. And what is the ultimate nature of these jewels? What is the final fruit that grows from a mind cultivated in stillness and clarity? The answer is the very aim of the path itself, the arising of a profound, unshakable wisdom. We have journeyed through the essential training of the master sailor. We have learnt the importance of an ethical life, the sila that gives our vessel integrity. We have explored the anchor of mindfulness, sati, and the mental gymnasium of meditation, samadhi, which together build the sailor's unwavering focus and stability. A question naturally arises: to what end? Why do we work so diligently to calm the waters of our life and to steady the chattering mind? We do so in order that the ultimate faculty of the path may arise. We do it so that a light may be switched on in the darkness. This light, this culmination of our training, is known as prajna, or wisdom. In our culture, we think of wisdom as the accumulation of knowledge, the mastery of facts, the ability to construct a clever argument. But the wisdom of prajna is something entirely different. You can read every book ever written about the chemistry of water and the principles of buoyancy, but this will not teach you how to swim. Prajna is not the knowledge about the water, It is the embodied, intuitive, direct knowing that arises when you are actually in it. It is not a product of thinking. It is the fruit of seeing. It is the clear, unambiguous insight into the nature of reality that dawns in a mind that has become both pure and still. This liberating wisdom does not arise by accident. It rests upon the two great pillars we have already established: our ethical conduct and our mental discipline. Our practice of sila, right speech, right action, and right livelihood is what creates a mind free from the turbulence of guilt, remorse, and defensiveness. It is impossible to achieve deep clarity when your life is causing harm and creating conflict. Living ethically is like building a stable, unshakable foundation on solid ground for our lighthouse. Our practice of samadhi, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration is what forges the mind into a powerful instrument of investigation. It is the patient work of grinding and polishing the great lens for our lighthouse telescope, clearing it of the distortions of bias and the fog of distraction. When you have a stable foundation and a perfectly polished lens, you can finally see the stars as they truly are, without wavering or illusion. This clear seeing is prajna. And what does this wisdom see? It is not a mystical vision of other worlds. It is the direct, cellular, and undeniable seeing of the three truths we have so far only discussed as concepts. With a mind sharpened by samadhi, one no longer just believes in impermanence. One sees it directly. You witness the constant, fizzing, vibrating nature of reality itself, observing every thought, every sensation, every sound as a fleeting bubble that arises and vanishes in the same instant. You no longer just accept the idea of not self, you see it in action. You look for the thinker behind the thought, the feeler behind the feeling, and you find nothing but an empty, flowing process. The illusion of the solid, separate captain dissolves in the light of this direct perception. And in seeing this constant flux and this absence of a core self, you see the truth of dukkha. You see, with profound clarity, how every act of clinging to this flow, every attempt to find a permanent refuge in what is inherently transient, is the very act that creates friction, stress, and suffering. Imagine for your entire life you have been looking at the world through a dirty, rain-streaked window. The view outside reality is vibrant and clear, but your perception is clouded and distorted. The mud and grime on the glass are our ignorance, our judgments, our restless desires and fears. The practice of sila is the decision to stop throwing more mud on the window. The practice of samadhi is the patient, diligent work of cleaning the glass, using the cloth of mindfulness to wipe away every last streak of grime. Prajna is what happens when the window is finally clean. It is the brilliant, unobstructed light that pours in, illuminating the room and allowing you to see the view outside with perfect clarity for the first time. This light of wisdom is the ultimate power on the path. It is the beam from our lighthouse that cuts through the densest fog. This fog has a name: avidya, or ignorance. This ignorance is not a lack of education. It is a fundamental, deep-seated misperception of reality. It is the delusion that holds impermanent things to be permanent, that believes true and lasting happiness can be found in what is inherently unsatisfactory, and that insists a solid, independent self exists where there is only an interdependent process. This ignorance is the single root of the entire tree of suffering. Prajna is its direct antidote. When the light of wisdom shines on this darkness, the darkness does not put up a fight. It simply vanishes, for it never had any real substance of its own. This profound wisdom is not an abstract philosophical trophy. Its value is intensely practical, transforming how we navigate every moment of our lives. It manifests as skillful choice. When a wave of anger arises in the untrained mind, that mind, shrouded in the fog of ignorance, immediately identifies with it. I am angry. It believes the story the anger is telling, and it lashes out, creating harm for itself and others. But the mind illuminated by Prajna sees the anger arise as an impersonal, unpleasant, and impermanent burst of energy. It understands its painful nature, and because it sees clearly, it is not compelled to act. It has the freedom to choose a different response zone of patience, understanding, or simple non-engagement. When a strong desire arises, the wise mind sees its transient nature. It can appreciate the beauty or pleasure of an object without the painful clinging that insists, I must have this to be happy. It is the difference between warming your hands at a fire and grabbing the burning coals. This is the dawn of true freedom. It is a life lived not according to a rigid set of external rules, but guided by an internal compass of clarity that sees, in real time, what leads towards suffering and what leads towards peace. We have now assembled the complete toolkit of the master sailor. We have the ethical integrity of the vessel, Sila. We have the stability, focus, and presence of the sailor at the helm, Samadhi. And we have the clear-seeing, navigational insight of wisdom, Prajna. We are no longer novices, merely theorizing about the sea. We are now equipped. With this toolkit in hand, we are ready to turn our ship and sail directly into the heart of the most powerful and challenging waves the ocean of life has to offer, to practice our skill in the midst of the storm itself. Let us begin with one of the most fiery, destructive, and intoxicatingly powerful waves of all, the tempest of anger. With our sailor's toolkit now complete, the ethical hull of Sila, the steady hand of Samadhi, and the clear-seeing wisdom of Prajna are ready to leave the calm waters of theory and steer our vessel into the heart of the storm. We will now apply our skills to the most powerful and challenging waves that life throws at us. We begin with a wave of fire, a force of nature that can arise in an instant, blinding our vision and threatening to burn our entire ship to the waterline. This is the wave of anger. Anger is one of the most powerful and seductive emotions. It arrives with a surge of energy, a feeling of righteousness, an intoxicating certainty that we have been wronged, and our response is justified. In a world full of injustice, cruelty, and carelessness, there are countless triggers for this fiery energy. But the ancient map of the mind asks us to look very closely at what anger actually does. It is a fire, and like any fire, it burns the one who holds it long before it ever touches the one it is aimed at. It floods our body with stress hormones, clouds our judgment, and poisons our own heart with bitterness and ill will. Conventionally, we have only two ways of dealing with this fire, and both are unskillful. The first is suppression. We feel the heat of anger rising, but we believe it is wrong or unsafe to show it, so we stuff it down. We clench our jaw, swallow our words, and pretend we are fine. This is like trying to hold a flaming coal in your pocket. It requires immense energy, and on the inside it silently burns you, transforming into long-term resentment, bitterness, and even physical illness. Eventually, the suppressed heat will find a way out, often exploding with disproportionate force at an innocent person over a trivial matter. The second unskillful method is unrestrained expression. We believe that venting our anger is healthy, so we let it rip. We shout, we slam doors, we send the vitriolic email. This may provide a momentary, addictive sense of release, but it is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It fans the flames, strengthens the neural pathways of reactivity, damages our relationships, and almost always leaves a toxic residue of guilt and regret. The path of the master sailor offers a radical third way. It is not suppression, and it is not expression. It is investigation. It is the courageous act of turning towards the fire with our tools of mindfulness and wisdom. not to be consumed by it, but to understand it. The moment you feel the heat of anger beginning to rise, the practice begins. The very first step is to use right mindfulness to simply recognize and name it. In the quiet of your own mind, you acknowledge, anger is here. This simple act is revolutionary. By naming it, you create a tiny sliver of space between your awareness and the emotion itself. You are no longer completely possessed by the anger. You are the one who is aware of the anger. You have moved from being the fire to being the one who feels the fire's heat. The next step is to hold the anger with kindness. The great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh instructs us to cradle our anger like a crying baby. The anger is our suffering, our inner child in distress. You would not scream at a crying baby. You would hold it tenderly, trying to understand what is wrong. In the same way, you bring a gentle, compassionate attention to the anger within you. You can even say internally, I see you, anger. I know you are suffering. I will take care of you. This is not about approving of the anger, but about treating yourself with compassion in a moment of pain. This gentle acceptance is the water that begins to cool the flames. Now you do something truly radical. You temporarily let go of the narrative about who did what and why they were wrong, and you bring your full mindful attention to the raw physical sensations of the anger in your body. What does anger actually feel like as a pure physical event? Perhaps it is a tightness in your chest, a burning heat in your face and neck, a clenching in your fists and jaw, a churning, acidic feeling in your stomach. Simply observe these sensations with a curious, scientific detachment. Do not judge them or wish them away, just feel them. As you watch, you will make a profound discovery. You will see that these sensations are not solid and monstrous. They are patterns of energy, constantly shifting, vibrating, and changing. You are witnessing anicca, impermanence, in the heart of the fire. The tightness might intensify, then loosen. The heat might pulse, then fade. By staying with the physical reality, you drain the anger of its fuel, the mental story, and you begin to see it for what it is. An impersonal, transient storm of energy passing through your body. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates the consequence of not letting this energy pass. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river that was swollen by heavy rains. On the bank stood a beautiful young woman in fine clothes, hesitating to cross for fear of ruining her dress and being swept away. The monks' vows forbade them from touching a woman. The junior monk stood back, feeling righteous. But the senior monk, seeing the woman's distress, walked over to her, hoisted her onto his shoulders, waded through the powerful current, and gently set her down on the opposite bank. He gave a slight bow and continued his journey. The junior monk, utterly scandalized, followed behind, seething in silence. For 2 hours, his mind was a storm of fury. He replayed the scene over and over, building his case, fueling his indignation. He could not believe what his master had done. Finally, he could bear it no longer, and he burst out, "Master, how could you do that? You know we are forbidden from touching a woman. You have broken your sacred vows." The senior monk turned to him, his face calm and peaceful, and said simply, "I left that woman by the riverbank 2 hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This is what we do with our anger. The initial event is the crossing of the river, but our suffering comes from carrying the story, the resentment, the indignation for hours, days, or even years afterward. The mindful investigation allows us to put the woman down. Finally, after the initial intensity of the fire has subsided through mindful attention, we can use the clear light of prajna, or wisdom, to look into the ashes. Anger is almost always a secondary emotion, a bodyguard for something more tender and vulnerable underneath. If you can gently ask yourself, what is beneath this anger? you will almost always find one of two things: hurt or fear. The anger arose because an expectation was not met, and you felt hurt, disrespected, or unseen. Or the anger arose because you felt your safety, your security, or your sense of self was being threatened, which is fear. By shining the light of wisdom on this deeper, more vulnerable root, you can address the real wound instead of just reacting to the fiery bodyguard. This is the path to true healing. By working with anger in this way, recognizing, holding, feeling, and investigating, we transform it from a destructive tyrant into a valuable messenger. It becomes a signal, a flashing red light on our vessel's dashboard, telling us that something inside needs our wise and compassionate attention. This is the art of taming the fiery waves. But fire is not the only element we must master on this ocean. Often, preceding it or lingering in its wake, there is another equally challenging weather pattern: a cold, disorienting fog that paralyzes our will and obscures our path. Now, we must learn to navigate this fog, the debilitating states of fear and anxiety. Having learned to work with the fiery wave of anger, we now turn our attention to a different, yet equally powerful, weather pattern on the ocean of the mind. This is not a hot, explosive force, but a cold, contracting one. It is the thick, disorienting fog of fear and the chilling, persistent mist of anxiety. Where anger pushes outward, fear pulls inward. It is the voice that whispers of impending doom, the racing heart in the middle of the night, the knot of dread that settles in the stomach. For many of us, this fog is the dominant climate of our inner world, and learning to navigate it is an essential skill for any sailor seeking the shore of peace. The first step in navigating this fog is to understand its nature. We must make a crucial distinction between useful, instinctual fear and the psychological suffering of anxiety. Useful fear is a survival mechanism that is rooted in the present moment. If a wild animal suddenly appears before you, or a car swerves into your lane, a jolt of fear arises. It floods your body with adrenaline, sharpens your senses, and prompts immediate, life-saving action. This fear is intelligent, efficient, and once the danger has passed, it subsides. It is an ally. Anxiety, however, is a different creature altogether. Anxiety is a fear that lives almost exclusively in the future. It is the fear of a story we are telling ourselves. What if I lose my job? What if I get sick? What if this person rejects me? What if I fail? Notice that all of these are thoughts about a future that has not happened and may never happen. We are not reacting to a present moment reality. We are suffering from our own imagination. We are living in a horror movie, produced, directed, and starring our own mind. This is the fog. Since the fog of anxiety is generated by thoughts of the future, the direct and most powerful antidote is to find our way back to the solid ground of the present moment. The mind cannot simultaneously be lost in a future catastrophe and be fully present in the here and now. The practice, then, is a radical act of return. When you feel the familiar knot of anxiety begin to tighten, the first step is to recognize, with mindfulness, that you are caught in a story. You can say to yourself, this is the what-if story again. This is anxiety. This simple recognition begins to separate you from the narrative. Next, you must anchor yourself firmly in the concrete reality of your senses. Anxiety is abstract. The senses are real. You can do this right now. Wherever you are, name 5 things you can see around you. A lamp, a book, the color of the wall, a crack in the ceiling, a plant. Now name 4 things you can feel with your body. The pressure of your feet on the floor, the texture of your clothes against your skin, the solidness of the chair supporting you, the temperature of the air. Now, listen for 3 distinct sounds. Now, notice 2 things you can smell. Finally, take 1 slow, deliberate breath. This simple practice acts like a powerful emergency brake on the racing mind. It pulls your awareness out of the imaginary future and plants it firmly in the undeniable reality of the present. The fog begins to thin because you have found solid ground. Your breath is your most constant anchor. When your mind is spinning with 1,000 disastrous scenarios, the simple rhythmic sensation of the in-breath and the out-breath is your lifeline. By focusing on this physical, present moment event, you starve the anxiety of its fuel, which is your attention. Just as with anger, we can also learn to work with the raw physical sensations of fear. Instead of resisting the tightness in your chest or the fluttering in your stomach, can you bring a kind, curious attention to it? Can you explore its texture, its location, its intensity without judgment? When you do this, you see that these sensations, while unpleasant, are simply energy. You see their impermanent nature as they shift and change. You realize that you can, in fact, survive the physical feeling of fear. It is the story attached to the feeling that is unbearable. By separating the two, the fear loses its terrifying power. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates the mastery of fear. The Buddha's jealous cousin Devadatta conspired to have him killed. He arranged for the royal elephant, a massive and ferocious beast named Nalagiri, to be intoxicated with alcohol and set loose on the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. When the people saw the raging elephant charging towards them, its eyes red with fury, they screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's loyal attendant, Ananda, in an act of love, tried to stand in front of the Buddha to shield him, but the Buddha calmly told him to step aside. He then stood his ground, facing the charging behemoth alone. He did not run. He did not prepare to fight. He simply stood, perfectly still, and radiated an immense, powerful field of metta, of unconditional loving kindness and complete fearlessness. As the enraged animal thundered closer, it entered this powerful field of peace. Its pace slowed. Its trunk, which had been flailing wildly, lowered. Its eyes lost their fire. The storm of its rage was completely subdued by the mountain of the Buddha's unshakable calm. Nalagiri came to a halt before the Buddha and knelt, allowing the master to gently stroke its forehead. The raging elephant is our own panic, our own terror, our own anxiety. Our usual response is to either flee from it through distraction and avoidance, or to fight it, which often just creates more anxiety about our anxiety. The Buddha shows a third way: to meet the terror with a firm, grounded, and compassionate presence. The unshakable stability of the present moment has the power to tame our most ferocious inner demons. We do not have to be swept away by them. Finally, a long-term antidote to the fog of anxiety is the cultivation of saddha, a word often translated as faith, but which is better understood as a deep, grounded confidence. Anxiety stems from a fundamental lack of trust in our ability to handle the future. We cultivate saddha in two ways. First, by developing confidence in the path and in these tools, seeing for ourselves that they work. And second, by developing confidence in ourselves. You can do this by consciously reflecting on all the difficulties you have already faced and survived in your life. You have a perfect track record of getting through 100% of your bad days. You are more resilient than you think. You do not need to know what the future holds. You only need to trust that you have the inner resources to meet whatever arises with awareness and kindness. By learning to distinguish useful fear from anxious thought, by grounding ourselves in the present moment, and by meeting the energy of fear with a calm and compassionate presence, we learn to navigate the fog. We have now faced the fire of anger and the fog of fear, two powerful storms of aversion. But the ocean contains other forces. There are powerful currents of attraction, magnetic forces that can pull our ship onto the rocks just as surely as a storm can. We must now learn to navigate the beautiful and often treacherous currents of desire and attachment. Having navigated the stormy seas of aversion, the fire of anger, and the fog of fear, we now turn our vessel toward a region of the ocean that is, in many ways, far more treacherous. It does not threaten us with violent waves or terrifying monsters. Instead, it beckons us with calm, sunlit waters, beautiful islands, and the enchanting song of mermaids. This is the realm of desire and attachment, the powerful magnetic currents that pull us toward the things we love, cherish, and crave. It is a difficult realm to navigate, for the danger is hidden within the very things that bring us the most pleasure. It is easy to see why we would want to work with anger and fear. They are obviously painful. But why should we be cautious around joy, love, and success? The wisdom of the path does not ask us to renounce these things, but to examine, with great care, the nature of our holding of them. The problem is not the beautiful island, but our desperate need to claim it as our own and our terror at the thought of ever having to leave it. We have been taught to think of freedom as getting what we want, but the master sailor knows that true freedom lies in the way we relate to both what we get and what we lose. This is the work of releasing the golden chains. A chain is a tool of bondage, whether it is forged from rusty iron or from shimmering gold. The iron chains are our attachments to negativity or grudges, our victimhood, our self-pity. They are heavy and obviously painful, and we can often find the motivation to break free from them. But the golden chains are far more subtle and seductive. These are our attachments to the good things in life, the love of our partner and children, the satisfaction of a successful career, our physical health and vitality, the respect of our peers, our beautiful home or our cherished possessions. These are the sources of our greatest joys. And yet, when our inner peace becomes entirely dependent on them, they become chains. Why? Because of the universal law we have already seen. Anicca, impermanence. All of these wonderful things are transient. Health gives way to sickness and old age. Careers end. Reputations rise and fall. Possessions break or are lost. The people we love will change. They will leave, or they will die. This is the unalterable nature of existence. When we weld our happiness to something that is guaranteed to change, we are setting ourselves up for inevitable suffering. The intensity of our pain when we lose something is directly proportional to the tightness of our grip upon it. The golden chains only feel like jewelry when everything is going our way. The moment life's currents shift, we feel their cold, heavy reality as they cut into our skin. This teaching is a profound invitation to distinguish between love and attachment, between appreciation and clinging. Attachment is a state of need and fear. It says, I need you in order to be happy. My sense of self is incomplete without you. I am terrified of you changing or leaving. Attachment is transactional. It seeks to possess and control its object as a way of securing its own fragile sense of well-being. True love, on the other hand, which in this path is called metta or karuna, is a state of generosity and freedom. It says, I cherish you, and I wish for you to be happy and free. Your presence brings me great joy. But my fundamental peace does not depend on possessing you. It is a spacious love that celebrates the other, rather than a contracted love that seeks to consume them. It is the ability to enjoy the warmth of the fire without grasping the burning coals. There is a story of a man who spent his whole life working to save money for his dream. Finally, in his old age, he bought a magnificent boat. It was a masterpiece of design, with a sleek hull, polished brass fittings, and tall, graceful sails. He loved this boat more than anything in the world. He would spend hours every day admiring it, polishing it, and dreaming of the adventures they would have. But his love was so great that it morphed into a profound fear. He was terrified of the open ocean. A sudden squall could snap the mast. The harsh salt water could tarnish the beautiful wood. He might accidentally scratch its perfect hull against a dock. His attachment to the boat's perfection became a prison. To protect it from any possible harm, he kept it tied securely in the calmest part of the harbor. He never once hoisted its sails to feel the power of the wind. He never knew the joy of gliding across the open water, exploring hidden coves and distant shores. Years passed. The boat, never fulfilling the purpose for which it was built, began to decay. The relentless sun cracked its varnish, the damp air mildewed its sails, and it slowly rotted at its mooring, a sad monument to its owner's fear. The man's clinging, his desperate attachment, prevented him from ever truly experiencing the joy of the very thing he loved. This is what we do with our lives. We cling so tightly to our relationships that we stifle them with jealousy and expectation. We cling so tightly to our successes that we become paralyzed by the fear of failure. We cling so tightly to our youth and health that we cannot age with grace and dignity. The practice of letting go is not about becoming a cold, indifferent ascetic. It is the exact opposite. It is the key to truly living. It is an internal shift from a clenched fist to an open hand. It is the wisdom to enjoy everything, fully every person, every success, every moment of pleasure while holding a quiet, background awareness of its impermanent nature. It is seeing the inherent brokenness in Ajahn Chah's cup, which allows us to appreciate its beauty more, not less. This internal letting go is cultivated by the practice of contentment and gratitude. The thirsty mind of Tanha is always focused on what is missing. It is a perpetual state of if only. If only I had that partner, that house, that job, then I would be happy. The contented mind, however, consciously turns its attention to the abundance that is already present. It is the simple practice of appreciating the food we have, the roof over our head, the friend who calls, the simple miracle of a healthy body. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to the poison of endless craving. When we learn to release the golden chains, we are not left with nothing. We are left with freedom. The freedom to love someone with our whole heart, without the fear of our world collapsing if they leave. The freedom to strive for success with passion and creativity, without our self-worth being tied to the outcome. The freedom to experience the myriad pleasures of life as gifts, not as necessities. This is the difference between being a needy prisoner of life and becoming a graceful participant in its ever-changing dance. It is the wisdom of the man who finally unties his beautiful boat, sails it out of the harbor, and feels the wind and the sun on his face, truly alive in the magnificent, fleeting present moment. As we learn to release the golden chains of attachment, to loosen the tight, clenched fist of me and mine, a remarkable thing happens. The immense energy that was once consumed by grasping, protecting, and defending our small, separate self becomes available. A space opens up in the heart, a vast and fertile ground that was once occupied by the anxieties of the ego. The question then arises, what grows in this newly cleared field? The answer is one of the most beautiful blossoms on the entire path. The heart, freed from its own preoccupations, naturally and effortlessly turns towards others. This is the gentle healing rain of karuna, or compassion. In the language of the path, karuna is not merely a feeling of sadness for another's misfortune. It is something far more active and alive. It is defined as the trembling or quivering of the heart in response to seeing suffering, coupled with the sincere, active wish for that suffering to end. It is not pity. Pity looks down from a position of superiority, creating distance. Oh, that poor person. Compassion, however, meets the other at eye level. It recognizes the shared ground of our humanity and says, I know this kind of pain. This is part of the human condition we all share. It is also not the same as empathic distress, where we become so overwhelmed by another's pain that we drown alongside them. becoming useless. True compassion is the union of a tender heart and a wise mind. It is the ability to feel with another, while remaining grounded and stable enough to be a source of strength and support, not another victim. It is the heart of a skilled surgeon, full of care, yet steady enough to perform the healing work. For most of us, the journey into compassion must begin in the last place we think to look, with ourselves. We live in a culture that often mistakes self-criticism for a virtue and self-compassion for an indulgence. We can easily feel a surge of compassion for a suffering child or an animal, but when we ourselves fail, or feel anxious, or are in pain, our inner voice is often relentlessly harsh and judgmental. The path teaches that we cannot offer water to others from a dry well. Genuine compassion for others must be rooted in a genuine compassion for ourselves. The practice, then, begins by turning this gentle rain of kindness inward. It is the courage to look at our own dukkha, our own fears, our own insecurities, our own sorrow sand, instead of judging or distracting ourselves. We offer ourselves the simple healing wish: may I be free from this suffering. May I be at peace. This is not selfish. It is the necessary, foundational act of mending our own vessel so that we may be of service to others on the sea. From this foundation of self-compassion, we can then begin to extend that feeling outwards in the formal practice of karuna bhavana, or the cultivation of compassion. You begin your meditation by generating a feeling of kindness for yourself. Then, you bring to mind a person you love and care for deeply, a friend, a family member. You reflect on any difficulties or sufferings they may have in their life, big or small, and you extend the heartfelt wish: may you be free from your suffering. May you find your way to peace. You let your heart resonate with this sincere wish. Next, you bring to mind a neutral person, someone you see but have no strong feelings about, like a cashier at the grocery store or a person you pass on your daily walk. You recognize that this person too has a complex life filled with their own unique struggles, hopes, and fears. They too wish to be happy and free from pain, and you extend the same wish to them. May you be free from your suffering. May you find peace. In this step, the walls of indifference in our heart begin to dissolve. The most challenging and transformative stage is to then bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict or for whom you feel resentment. This is where compassion becomes a truly powerful practice of purification. Instead of dwelling on the anger or hurt they may have caused you, you use your wisdom to see that their unskillful actions almost certainly spring from their own suffering, their own confusion, their own inner pain. Hurt people hurt people. From this deeper understanding, you try, as best you can, to offer them the same wish. You too are suffering. May you be free from the suffering that causes you to act in this way. May you find peace. This is a profound act of letting go, of choosing freedom over the prison of resentment. Finally, you expand your awareness to include all living beings everywhere, without exceptional people, all animals, all creatures seen and unseen, and you radiate this wish outwards in all directions. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering and its causes. This is how the heart becomes boundless. The ultimate embodiment of compassion is found in a moving story from the Buddha's life. One day, while walking through the monastery, he came upon a monk named Putigata Tissa, who was gravely ill with a disfiguring skin disease. His robes were soiled, and he was covered in oozing sores that gave off a terrible smell. The other monks, overcome with disgust, had abandoned him, leaving him to lie in his own filth. When the Buddha saw this, he did not turn away. Without a moment's hesitation, he approached the suffering monk. He sent his attendant, Ananda, to fetch water, and he himself began to gently boil it. Then, the fully enlightened one, the teacher of gods and humans, knelt down and with his own hands began to wash the sick monk's putrid sores and his soiled robes. He cleaned the monk's living quarters until they were spotless. After making the monk comfortable, the Buddha sat beside him and began to teach. Touched by this incredible act of kindness that looked past his wretched physical state and saw the being who was suffering, the monk's heart opened completely. He listened to the teachings, and in that moment, he became spiritually awakened, just before he peacefully passed away. The Buddha then gathered all the monks and delivered a timeless teaching. Monks, you have no mother or father to care for you here. If you do not care for one another, who will? Whoever would tend to me should tend to the sick. Compassion is not a lofty, abstract ideal. It is this. It is the willingness to roll up our sleeves and wash the sores of the world. It does not recoil from the messiness of suffering. It moves towards it with a heart that is both tender and brave. It is the force that dissolves the illusion of our separateness and reminds us, in the most profound way, that we are all in this vast ocean together. Our own liberation is inextricably linked to the liberation of all. The gentle rain of karuna soothes the fires of anger and washes away the dirt of judgment. But compassion is a response to the presence of suffering. What of happiness? What is the heart's response when we witness the joy and success of others? For our heart to be truly balanced, it must not only tremble at sorrow, but also learn to dance with joy. This is the radiant, sunny counterpart to compassion, the quality we will explore next, sympathetic joy. After immersing ourselves in the gentle, healing rain of compassion, karuna, our hearts have learned to open to the reality of suffering. We have learned to meet pain, both our own and that of others, with a tender and courageous presence. But a heart that is only trained to respond to suffering risks becoming heavy, tilted towards a sorrowful view of the world. The path of the master sailor is one of supreme balance. To navigate the great ocean, we must be able to respond not only to the storms, but also to the brilliant, sunlit days. A truly liberated heart must not only know how to weep with those who weep, but also how to dance with those who dance. This is the practice of mudita, the radiant sunshine of sympathetic joy. Mudita is the genuine, unselfish joy that arises when we witness the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is the heart's happy congratulations to the universe. It is the direct and powerful antidote to the poison of envy, jealousy, and comparison. In our modern culture, particularly in the age of social media, where everyone's highlight reel is on constant display, envy can feel like a default setting. We see a friend's joyful vacation photos, a colleague's promotion, another's happy relationship, and a subtle, painful contraction can occur in our own heart. A sour, bitter feeling arises. This is the pain of jealousy. It is a self-inflicted wound born from a deep misunderstanding about the nature of happiness. Envy operates on a principle of scarcity. It is the deep-seated, erroneous belief that happiness is a limited resource, a finite pie. If someone else gets a large slice, that must mean there is less available for me. This scarcity mindset traps us in a state of constant competition and comparison. It makes us see the success of others as a personal defeat. But mudita introduces us to a radical new economy, the economics of abundance. It reveals the truth that happiness is not a zero-sum game. Another person's joy does not diminish the world's supply. It adds to it. And the most remarkable truth is that if we can learn to tap into their joy, we can access a nearly infinite source of happiness for ourselves. Consider this. Our own personal moments of peak happiness are relatively rare. But in any given moment, on this planet of 8 billion people, someone is experiencing profound joy. Someone is falling in love. Someone is holding their newborn child for the first time. Someone is achieving a lifelong dream. Someone has just received good news after a long period of worry. Someone is simply laughing, without reservation, with a dear friend. If our happiness is limited only to our own personal victories, we have very few opportunities for joy. But if we can train our heart to rejoice in the victories of others, we have millions of opportunities for joy every single day. We are no longer limited to the small, private well of our own ego's successes. We can drink from the vast, shared ocean of human happiness. Like compassion, sympathetic joy can be cultivated through a dedicated practice. We begin where it is easiest. Bring to mind a dear friend or a loved one. Picture them in a moment of true happiness, perhaps on their wedding day, celebrating a personal achievement, or simply laughing with pure delight. Instead of letting your own thoughts intrude, try to connect with the feeling of their joy. Feel it in your own body. Let a genuine smile come to your face, and offer them the silent wish, "I am so happy for you. May your joy and your good fortune continue and increase." Feel the expansive, warm quality of this state of mind. Then, just as with compassion, you can extend the practice. Bring to mind a neutral person. Acknowledge that while you do not know their life story, they too have their moments of happiness, their small triumphs, their cherished relationships. Offer them the same wish. Whoever you are, I rejoice in your happiness. May it continue. This practice begins to dismantle the walls of indifference that separate us from the sea of humanity around us. The greatest challenge and the most powerful medicine is to then bring to mind someone for whom you feel envy or rivalry. This is where the practice gets real. When you think of their success, the familiar pang of jealousy will likely arise. The first step is to meet that feeling of envy with mindfulness, without judgment. Envy is here. Then, using your wisdom, you can try to shift your perspective. Remind yourself, this person, just like me, simply wants to be happy. Their happiness is not a threat to my own. As an act of pure mental training, you try to find even a tiny spark of genuine joy for them. Perhaps you can appreciate their hard work or the skill they demonstrated. You can try to offer the thought, "May you enjoy your success. I will try to be happy for you." This practice is a direct assault on the prison of envy. Each time you do it, you weaken the bars of your own cage. Imagine a gardener who is obsessed with the single rose bush in their small yard. They are in a constant state of anxiety, comparing their rose to all the other flowers in the neighborhood. When their neighbor's lily blooms with particular brilliance, they feel a secret resentment. When another's sunflower grows taller, they feel a sense of personal failure. Their world of joy is tiny, fragile, and constantly under threat. Now imagine another gardener. This gardener also tends to their own rose bush with love and care, but they see the entire neighborhood as one vast, interconnected garden. When they see the neighbor's brilliant lily, their heart leaps with joy because it adds to the beauty of the whole. When the sunflower grows tall, they marvel at its strength. This gardener's heart is as large as the entire garden. They have access to the joy of 1,000 different flowers. This is the heart of mudita. Cultivating sympathetic joy is the perfect medicine for our modern affliction of comparison. It frees us from the exhausting and painful game of measuring our worth against the curated images of others. It builds connection, it fosters generosity, and it lifts our own spirits. For it is impossible to feel genuine joy for another and feel bitter at the same time. Together, karuna and mudita form two great pillars of a balanced heart. Compassion allows us to be present with the world's sorrow without being crushed by it. Sympathetic joy allows us to be present with the world's happiness without being diminished by it. We have learned to engage with the lows and the highs, the weeping and the dancing. The final question for the heart then becomes, what is the quality that allows us to hold both of these immense experiences, the sorrow and the joy, in a state of perfect, unshakable balance? What is the steady keel that keeps our vessel upright, no matter how the tides of life may shift? This is the supreme and culminating quality of the heart, the profound state of equanimity. As our vessel journeys across the great ocean of experience, we begin to notice an underlying lawfulness to the way the currents move. We see that when we cultivate a heart of compassion, the world seems to reflect back connection and kindness. When we act out of anger or jealousy, we are met with defensiveness and isolation. We start to perceive a direct relationship between the quality of our inner world and the texture of our outer experience. This perception brings us face to face with one of the most powerful and perhaps most misunderstood principles of the path. This is the universal law of ethical cause and effect, the law of karma. In the popular imagination, the word karma is shrouded in misunderstanding. It is often seen as a synonym for fate or predestination, a cosmic ledger of reward and punishment meted out by an unseen judge. It is thought of as an inescapable destiny that has been set for us. The authentic teaching on karma is the precise opposite of this. It is not a doctrine of fatalism. It is the ultimate doctrine of freedom and personal responsibility. It is not a system of punishment, but a natural, impersonal law, as neutral and reliable as the law of gravity. Gravity does not punish you for stepping off a cliff. It simply operates. In the same way, karma is the universe's natural feedback loop for intentional action. The Buddha's definition was radically simple and psychologically profound. He said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma." This is the essential key. Karma is not the action itself, nor is it the result of the action. Karma is the volition, the intention, the driving force behind what we do, say, and think. An action that looks identical on the outside can have a vastly different karmic signature based on the intention behind it. If you accidentally bump into someone and cause them to fall, it is an unfortunate event, but it does not create negative karma. If, however, you intentionally shove someone with the desire to cause them harm, even if they do not fall, you have planted a potent karmic seed. Giving a donation to charity to impress others and inflate your own ego carries a completely different karmic weight than giving the same amount anonymously from a heart of pure generosity. The intention is the seed. The action is simply the planting of it. We plant these seeds through 3 doors. The door of the body through our physical actions, the door of speech through our words, and most importantly, the door of the mind, through our thoughts and intentions. For it is in the mind that all karmic impulses are born. The most helpful way to understand this law is through the metaphor of a farmer and their field. Your mind is the field. Every moment of your life, you are a farmer, planting seeds in this field. Every intentional action, every deliberate word, every conscious thought is a seed. Seeds of greed, hatred, and delusion are like planting thorny brambles and poisonous weeds. Seeds of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom are like planting nourishing fruit trees and beautiful, fragrant flowers. The harvest does not come immediately. A seed needs conditions to sprout: soil, water, sunlight. In the same way, our karmic seeds lie dormant until the right conditions converge for them to ripen into an experience, a result which is called vipaka. This explains why life can sometimes seem so unfair. We see a kind person suffering a terrible illness, or a corrupt person enjoying immense wealth and success. This is not a failure of the law of karma. It is a demonstration of its complexity. We are all living in a field where seeds from last year, 10 years ago, and from the distant past are ripening today. The kind person may be experiencing the fruit of an old, unskillful seed, even while they are planting beautiful new seeds of patience and courage in their present moment. The corrupt person may be enjoying the fruit of a past good deed, while simultaneously planting thorny new seeds of greed and harm that will inevitably ripen in their future. The crucial point is this: the farmer is not a helpless victim of the field. At any given moment, No matter what is currently growing, the farmer has the absolute power to decide what kind of seed to plant right now. You cannot change the seeds you planted yesterday, but you can, with total freedom, choose to stop planting weeds and begin cultivating a garden of virtue and happiness today. This is the profound power and liberating hope of karma. The Buddha declared, "We are the owners of our karma, the heirs to our karma. We are born from our karma, related to our karma, and supported by our karma. Whatever karma we create, whether good or evil, that we will inherit." This teaching dismantles any sense of victimhood. It places the responsibility for the quality of our lives squarely in our own hands. When we are suffering, instead of blaming the world, we can learn to look inward and ask, what seeds of my own thought, speech, and action may have contributed to this result? When we are happy, we can recognize it as the fruit of our past skillful actions and feel a sense of wholesome encouragement. We can see this principle operating in the simple fabric of our daily lives. If you consistently plant seeds of harsh speech, you will find yourself living in a social world of tension, mistrust, and defensiveness. That is the harvest. If you consistently plant seeds of generosity and kindness, you will find yourself surrounded by warmth, trust, and connection. That is the harvest. Our very personality is a karmic construct. It is the sum total of our most deeply ingrained mental and behavioral habits, the seeds we have planted again and again, until they have become a dense thicket. But the beauty of this teaching is that even the densest thicket can be cleared, and a new garden planted, one intentional moment at a time. Understanding karma gives our practice a profound sense of purpose. It is the ultimate motivation for cultivating mindfulness and making wise choices. Every moment becomes precious, an opportunity to plant a seed that will ripen into future well-being for ourselves and for others. It is the universe's guarantee that our efforts are never wasted. The gentle word, the kind thought, the generous act, none of it is lost. Each one is a seed of light planted in the field of our mind, a ripple of goodness sent out into the world. This understanding that our actions create these ripples naturally leads to a deeper inquiry. If my actions are interconnected with my results, how are they connected to the actions and results of everyone else? How are all the events in the universe woven together in one seamless fabric of cause and effect? This question invites us to zoom out from our personal field of karma and gaze upon the vast, intricate, and awe-inspiring web of all existence. Having understood the personal law of karma, that our own intentional actions are the seeds from which our experiences grow, are now ready to zoom our perspective out from our individual field to gaze upon the operating system of the entire cosmos. We are moving from a personal law to a universal one. Karma taught us that causes lead to effects in our own lives. The profound teaching of Paticassamupada, or dependent origination, reveals that this principle of cause and effect is the very fabric of all reality. Nothing, absolutely nothing, exists in isolation. Everything arises in dependence upon other factors. This is not just a deep philosophy. The Buddha declared that one who sees dependent origination sees the truth of the path itself. The law can be stated with elegant simplicity. When this is, that is. From the arising of this, that arises. When this is not, that is not. From the ceasing of this, that ceases. Point 1. This simple formula contains the secret of both our bondage and our liberation. When this is, that is, explains how things come into being. A flame arises only when there are the right conditions: fuel, heat, and oxygen. A plant grows only when a seed is met with the conditions of soil, water, and sunlight. The flame is not magically born from nothing, nor is it hidden inside the fuel. It is a dependent arising, a temporary event born from a confluence of causes. In the same way, A feeling of sadness within us does not arise from nowhere. It arises dependent on conditions, perhaps a memory, a hormonal shift, or a piece of bad news. When this is not, that is not, is the key to freedom. If you remove one of the essential conditions, the result cannot arise. If you remove the oxygen, the flame immediately ceases. This is why we practice the path. The Buddha saw that suffering, like the flame, also arises from a chain of dependent conditions, beginning with fundamental ignorance. By introducing wisdom and mindfulness into the chain, we remove the necessary conditions for suffering, and the entire edifice of our dukkha collapses. To make this less abstract, let us look deeply at a simple object, like a single sheet of paper. What is it? On the surface, it is just a piece of paper. But if we practice looking with the eyes of dependent origination, we see something much more miraculous. We see that for this paper to exist, there must first be a tree. But the tree cannot exist without the sun that nourished it, the rain that watered it, and the earth that gave it minerals. So, the sun, the cloud, and the earth are all present in this sheet of paper. Then we must see the logger who cut down the tree. In the logger, we see his parents who gave him life, the food he ate for breakfast that gave him energy, the farmer who grew that food, and the entire economic and social system that allowed him to do his work. All of that is also in this sheet of paper. We must see the truck driver who brought the logs to the mill, the workers who operated the machinery, the engineer who designed the factory, the miner who extracted the iron to build the machines. If we were to take any one of these elements away, if we were to return the sunlight to the sun, the water to the cloud, the logger to his parents, this sheet of paper could not exist. It has no separate, independent existence. It is entirely composed of non-paper elements. It is empty of a separate self. The great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh coined a beautiful word for this reality: inter-being. The paper inter is with the entire cosmos. An ancient and poetic metaphor for this interconnected reality is the net of Indra. Imagine a vast net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfectly polished, multifaceted jewel. The miraculous nature of this net is that each jewel reflects all the other jewels. If you were to look closely into the surface of any one jewel, you would see the shimmering reflections of every other jewel in the entire infinite expanse. Not only that, but each of the reflections in that single jewel also contains the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on to infinity. This is a hologram of the universe. Every one of you, every person, every animal, every plant, every atom is a jewel in this net. We are all interconnected. My existence is reflected in yours, and yours is reflected in mine. The slightest movement of one jewel sends a vibration through the entire web, subtly affecting every other. There is nothing outside the net. When this understanding moves from an intellectual concept to a deeply felt reality, it completely transforms our view of ourselves and the world. First, it is the final and definitive dissolution of the illusion of a separate self. If everything I am embody, my thoughts, my very consciousness is dependent on the sun, the air, the food I eat, the language I speak, and the ideas I've inherited, then where is the solid, independent me to be found? The self is revealed to be not a static thing, but a dynamic event, a temporary focal point where all the threads of the universe converge. We are not a noun, we are a nexus. Second, this seeing is the most profound and unshakable foundation for compassion. When the boundary between self and other is seen as an illusion, harming another being becomes an absurdity. It is like the left hand trying to hurt the right hand. It is ultimately an act of self-harm. The suffering of a person in a distant land is not separate from my life. They are another jewel in the net, and their suffering is reflected in the jewel of my own consciousness. Their liberation is my liberation. Compassion is no longer a moralistic choice to be good. It becomes the only sane and logical response to the way things are. Finally, this ancient wisdom speaks directly to our most pressing modern crises. The teaching of dependent origination is the most profound ecological teaching ever articulated. It shows us, with scientific precision, that our well-being is utterly inseparable from the well-being of our planet. The health of the rivers, the forests, the oceans, and the atmosphere is not an external issue. It is the health of our own larger body. To poison the planet is quite literally to poison ourselves. By understanding this vast, intricate web of interconnectedness, we move from seeing the world as a collection of separate, competing objects to seeing it as one single, seamless, flowing process. It is a view that inspires not arrogance, but humility, not isolation, but connection, not carelessness, but a deep and abiding sense of reverence and responsibility. This vision of a world where everything is dependently arisen, where nothing possesses its own independent self-nature, leads us to the doorstep of the most subtle and liberating wisdom of the path. If everything is empty of a separate self, what is the ultimate nature of this emptiness? Is it a terrifying void, a black nothingness? The path reveals that the answer is quite the opposite. This is the great teaching on shunyata, the dynamic, creative, and liberating nature of emptiness itself. We have followed the thread of causation to its source, seeing how every object and every moment is woven into the vast, interdependent web of dependent origination. We saw how a single sheet of paper contains the sun, the cloud, and the entire cosmos. This understanding that nothing exists in isolation brings us to the threshold of the most profound, subtle, and ultimately liberating teaching of the entire path. It leads us to the heart of reality itself. This is the wisdom of shunyata, or emptiness. The word emptiness can sound frightening to the Western ear. It conjures images of a cold, nihilistic void, a bleak nothingness. It is crucial to understand that this is the complete opposite of what shunyata means. When the path speaks of emptiness, it does not mean non-existence. It means empty of a separate, independent, isolated self. A cup is useful precisely because it is empty, ready to contain anything. Its emptiness is its potential. In the same way, the emptiness of phenomena is not a lack, but the very condition that allows for all of life's dynamism, change, and interconnectedness. Emptiness is the flip side of the coin of dependent origination. It is because all things are dependently arisen that they are empty of a separate self. It is because the paper is full of the sun and the cloud that it is empty of a solid, independent paperness. The Great Heart Sutra declares, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." This is not a riddle, but a precise description of reality. Form is emptiness means that any form you can perceive, your body, a tree, a star, when you look at it deeply, you find it has no solid, independent core. It is a temporary manifestation of countless other conditions. Emptiness is form, is the other side of this truth. Emptiness is not a blank void that exists somewhere else, separate from our world. Emptiness is the very nature of form itself. The ceaseless, flowing, interconnected dance of life is the expression of emptiness. The two are inseparable, like a wave and the water of which it is made. This metaphor of the wave and the ocean is the key that unlocks the heart of this teaching. Imagine a single wave on the surface of the sea. This wave has a sense of self. It has a beginning and an end. It looks at the other waves and compares itself. That wave is bigger than me. I am taller than that one. It feels pride when it crests high, and it feels a deep existential terror as it nears the shore, knowing it will crash and cease to exist. The wave is trapped in the illusion of its own separateness, and so it is filled with fear and suffering. Then, one day, in a moment of deep, quiet contemplation, the wave looks within itself and has a profound insight. It realizes that its fundamental nature is not wave. Its fundamental substance is water. It has always been water. It will always be water. The shore it fears is not an end, but simply a transformation of its form. The other waves it compares itself to are also nothing but water. In that instant of realization, all fear dissolves. How can a wave truly die when its nature is the entire deathless ocean? How can it be jealous of another wave's height when it shares the same essential being? The wave, now knowing it is the ocean, is finally free. It can continue to play its role as a wave, rising and falling, traveling and crashing, but now it does so with a sense of joyful, fearless abandon. It is the ocean playing at being a wave. We are that wave. We are trapped in the belief that we are a small, fragile, separate self, terrified of our own beginning and end. The realization of Shunyata is the moment we awaken to our true nature. It is the discovery that we are not the separate wave, but the entire ocean of being. Our body, our thoughts, our personality, these are just the temporary form that the great ocean of consciousness is taking in this moment. To realize this is not to be annihilated. It is to become unannihilatable. It is to exchange a small, mortal, fearful identity for one that is as vast, timeless, and free as the cosmos itself. This understanding transforms our engagement with life from a struggle into a dance. When we are no longer terrified of protecting and defending the fragile ego, we can participate in the world with a new lightness and grace. We can still play our roles, a parent, a professional, a friend, an artist with passion and dedication, but we do so without the desperate, anxious clinging that comes from believing our entire identity is at stake. We know we are the ocean, simply expressing itself for a time as this particular, beautiful wave. This brings a profound sense of ease and playfulness to all that we do. Most importantly, this ultimate wisdom gives rise to the most powerful and spontaneous compassion. The feeling of separation between me and you is seen for the illusion that it is. When we know we are the ocean and we see another wave suffering, we do not feel pity for a separate other. We feel a disturbance in the very field of being that we are. The impulse to help, to soothe, to alleviate that suffering becomes as natural and unstoppable as the ocean itself rushing in to fill a low place. Compassion is no longer a moral duty to be practiced. It is the natural radiance of realized emptiness. It is the inevitable expression of a heart that knows no bounds. This is the summit of the mountain of wisdom, to see that all of reality is a dynamic, interconnected, and seamless whole, empty of any truly separate parts. To realize that our true nature is not the limited wave of our personal story, but the entire, boundless ocean of existence itself. This is the end of fear, the end of loneliness, the end of the war against ourselves and the world. This is the great, liberating peace. And this ultimate realization brings us to a final, magnificent question. When a being awakens to this truth, when the sailor finally understands that they are the ocean, what do they do? Do they simply dissolve into the bliss of the infinite, forever merged and gone from the world of form? Or is there another, even more compassionate possibility? This question leads us to the noblest ideal of the entire path, the way of the Bodhisattva. We stand at the summit of the mountain of wisdom, having gazed into the profound reality of Shunyata. We have seen that all of creation is a single, seamless, interconnected web, and that our true nature is not the fragile, separate wave, but the vast, deathless ocean itself. The illusion of the separate self has been seen through, and the fear of our own beginning and end has dissolved. This is the dawn of a peace that surpasses all understanding. And from this peak of supreme insight, a magnificent question arises: what now? When the sailor realizes they are the ocean, do they simply merge back into the formless blue, disappearing from the world of waves forever? For some, the answer is yes. This is the noble path of the Arhat, the worthy one, who, upon reaching the far shore of Nibbana, enters that final peace, their work complete. But the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism presents another, perhaps even more expansive and heroic vision. It is the path of the Bodhisattva. The word Bodhisattva means an awakening being. It is a being who has cultivated the wisdom and purity to achieve their own full liberation, to step off the wheel of suffering forever. They have reached the shores of Nibbana, but as they stand on that shore of perfect peace, they pause. They look back, and they see the vast ocean still teeming with countless other beings, countless other waves still caught in the storm, still believing themselves to be separate, still suffering in the grip of fear and confusion. And in that moment of looking back, an extraordinary transformation occurs, born from the perfect union of wisdom and compassion. The Bodhisattva's wisdom, their prajna, sees with perfect clarity the truth of emptiness. It knows that, in an ultimate sense, there are no separate others to be saved. It knows that all is one ocean. Yet, their boundless compassion, their karuna, sees the very real suffering of the beings who are still trapped in the relative illusion. Their heart quivers at the sight of this suffering. The Bodhisattva stands with one foot in the absolute truth of unity, and the other in the relative world of suffering. And from this sublime paradox, a vow is born, the most audacious and beautiful promise ever conceived. I will not enter final peace. The Bodhisattva vows, I will not rest on this shore of my own liberation until every last being, down to the last blade of grass, has been safely guided across the ocean of suffering. This is not a sacrifice made with a heavy heart. It is the only logical and spontaneous action that can arise from a fully awakened mind. Since there is no separate self to protect, there is no cost in staying. Since compassion is boundless, the desire to help is as natural and unstoppable as the sun's desire to shine. The Bodhisattva's joy is no longer found in their own peace, but in the service of liberating all. Imagine a wide, turbulent river, the river of samsara. On this side is suffering, and on the far shore is the peace of Nibbana. A wise and diligent person builds a sturdy raft, and through great effort navigates the treacherous currents and safely reaches the far shore. This is a great accomplishment. But the Bodhisattva is like another traveler who also reaches the far shore, but upon arriving looks back. They see the crowds still stranded on the bank, wailing in fear and confusion. And because their heart is one with all of them, they cannot bear to simply enjoy their own safety. So they turn their raft around and paddle back into the raging current. They spend the rest of time, eon after eon, ferrying beings across the river. Their work is tireless, their spirit is joyful, and their motivation is pure. They are the great ferryman. The Bodhisattva's path is not a passive waiting, but an active engagement with the world. Their actions are guided by what are known as the paramitas, or the perfections. These are the qualities they perfect in the service of others. The perfection of generosity, giving freely of their material resources, their time, and the teachings themselves. The perfection of ethical conduct, living a life of impeccable integrity that inspires others. The perfection of patience, bearing all hardships and insults with an unshakable calm for the sake of their mission. The perfection of joyful effort, engaging in the difficult work of liberation with boundless energy and delight. The perfection of meditation, maintaining a stable and clear mind in the midst of chaos. And the perfection of wisdom, the very insight into emptiness that fuels and guides all the other actions. This heroic ideal might seem impossibly distant, reserved for mythical figures from ancient scriptures, but the path of the Bodhisattva is open to every one of us right now. The journey begins not with enlightenment, but with a single, simple thought. May I awaken for the benefit of all beings. It begins the moment we start to shift our life's primary motivation from "what can I get?" to "how can I give?" Every time we choose kindness over anger, every time we truly listen to someone in pain, every time we share what we have without seeking reward, every time we choose to forgive, we are walking the Bodhisattva path. Every act of service, no matter how small, when done with a compassionate heart, is the action of a Bodhisattva. It is picking up a piece of trash from the park. It is comforting a crying child. It is using our skills and talents, not just for personal gain, but to create something beautiful or useful for the world. The Bodhisattva is the ultimate skilled sailor. Having mastered the ocean, they do not abandon it. They become a rescue vessel, a lighthouse, a guide for all other ships lost in the storm. They are the living embodiment of enlightened action in the world, the proof that the deepest wisdom leads not to a cold detachment, but to the warmest and most fearless engagement with life. This heroic ideal, this outward-facing path of service, is powered by a specific, cultivated, and boundless inner energy. It is the active goodwill and unconditional friendliness that forms the very foundation of a compassionate life. This is the radiant, life-affirming quality of loving kindness, or metta. We have now arrived at the final shore of our exploration, the very source from which all other skillful qualities of the heart spring forth. We have navigated the fire of anger, the fog of fear, the currents of attachment, and we have been guided by the heroic, compassionate ideal of the Bodhisattva. We must now ask, what is the fundamental energy that fuels this entire journey? What is the atmosphere, the inner climate, that makes a life of wisdom and compassion possible? The answer is the most gentle, foundational, and transformative practice of all. It is the practice of cultivating metta, or loving kindness. If compassion is the heart's response to pain, and sympathetic joy is the heart's response to happiness, metta is the heart's baseline state. It is the steady, unconditional, and friendly warmth that radiates outwards towards all of life, without exception and without condition. We must be clear, this is not the sentimental, possessive, and often fickle emotion we usually call love. It is not romantic love, which is exclusive and based on attraction. It is not transactional affection, which we offer to people only when they please us. Metta is a far more vast and stable quality. It is a boundless, universal goodwill. It is the sincere and simple wish for all living beings to be happy and well, simply because they exist. It is the practice of becoming a true friend to the world. The perfect metaphor for metta is the sun. The sun shines its light and its warmth down upon the earth without discrimination. It shines on the beautiful rose garden and on the pile of rotting garbage. It warms the skin of the saint and the sinner alike. The sun does not hold a committee meeting to decide who is worthy of its rays today. It doesn't withhold its warmth from the parts of the world it dislikes. It simply, ceaselessly, and generously radiates. To practice metta is to cultivate this same quality in our own heart to become a source of warmth and light for ourselves and for all beings without prejudice. Like all these practices, the journey of metta must begin at home, with ourselves. For many of us, this is the most difficult step. We find it far easier to wish happiness for others than to believe we are worthy of it ourselves. Our inner landscape is often dominated by a harsh inner critic, a voice of relentless judgment. But the path teaches a crucial lesson. It is impossible to genuinely wish for others to be happy if, on a deep level, you do not wish it for yourself. Trying to do so is a form of hypocrisy that the heart will not believe. And so, the practice must start with the radical act of offering loving kindness to ourselves. This is not narcissism or selfish indulgence. It is the necessary first step of filling our own vessel, so that our kindness can naturally and genuinely overflow to others. It is looking at our own imperfect, struggling self and offering the simple, profound wish, may I be happy, may I be well. From this foundation, we can then engage in the formal cultivation of loving kindness, the metta bhavana. In the quiet of our meditation, we use specific phrases as a tool to direct the heart. We begin with ourselves, gently repeating a series of intentions, like a mantra of well-wishing. Classic phrases include, may I be safe, may I be healthy in body and in mind, may I be happy, may I live with ease. We are not trying to force a feeling, but simply planting these seeds of intention in the soil of the mind. Once we have established a baseline of warmth for ourselves, we extend it outwards in expanding circles. First, we bring to mind a benefactor or a respected teacher, someone for whom we feel natural gratitude, and we offer them the same wishes. May you be safe, may you be healthy. Then, we bring to mind a dear friend and let the feeling of metta flow easily towards them. This is often the stage where the heart feels most open and the phrases feel most natural. Next comes the work of dissolving barriers. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see but have no strong feelings about. By offering them these same wishes for happiness and well-being, we begin to break down the walls of indifference that keep us in a small world. We recognize their full and complete humanity. The most transformative stage is to then bring to mind a difficult person. This is not about condoning harmful behavior. It is about the radical act of choosing to free our own heart from the prison of hatred. We recognize that their unskillfulness comes from their own suffering, and we try as best we can to wish them well, to wish for them to be free from the very anger and delusion that makes them cause harm. May you too find true happiness. Finally, we make the heart boundless. We radiate these phrases of loving kindness in all directions, to the front, to the back, to the left, and to the right, above and below. We extend it to all beings, in all realms, all humans, all animals, all spirits, all creatures great and small. May all beings everywhere without exception be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, the heart transcends all boundaries of nation, race, religion, or even species. It becomes one with the sun. The daily practice of metta is a profound alchemy that changes the very chemistry of our mind. It is the direct antidote to fear and anger. It is impossible to feel genuine goodwill for another and hatred for them in the same moment. It dissolves social anxiety, transforming our default perception of strangers from potential threats to fellow beings who, just like us, want to be happy. It rewrites our inner narrative from one of criticism to one of encouragement. It becomes a portable source of peace and positivity that we can carry with us anywhere. Metta is not just a meditation, it is a way of life. It is the silent wish for well-being we can offer the stressed-out cashier at the store. It is the gentle tone we use with a family member, even when we are tired. It is the way we hold the suffering of the world in our heart, without being crushed by it. With a mind steeped in metta, the skilled sailor no longer views the ocean as a hostile environment to be conquered or endured. It becomes a vast, living community of beings, each one deserving of kindness and care. The journey is no longer a solitary struggle for survival, but a collective voyage towards a shared shore of well-being. This boundless, friendly warmth is the final, essential quality of a liberated heart. It is the foundational soil from which all other virtues grow, and the ultimate expression of our own awakened nature. We have now traveled the entire map, We have explored the nature of the stormy sea. We have assembled the tools for the journey, and we have learned the great skills of the heart and mind required to navigate any weather. All that is left now is to bring our vessel gently into the final harbor, to reflect on the immense journey we have taken from suffering to understanding, and to reaffirm the great discovery we have made about the nature of true and lasting peace. Our long voyage together is now drawing to a close. We began as a sailor in a small boat, feeling lost and overwhelmed by the vast, unpredictable ocean of life. We were tossed by the waves, drenched by the spray, and felt utterly at the mercy of a seemingly hostile sea. But we did not stay there. We began a journey of discovery. We first had the courage to look directly at the storm, to acknowledge the reality of dukkha. Then, we found the source of its power, not in the world outside, but in the clinging and craving of our own mind, the thirst of tanha. We glimpsed the possibility of a serene and unshakable peace, the calm eye of the storm known as Nirodha, and we unfolded the ancient map that shows the way there, the noble eightfold path. With this map in hand, we began to train. We learned to repair the hull of our vessel through ethical living. We learned to steady our hand on the tiller through the discipline of meditation. And we learned to see by the clear light of wisdom. With these tools, we sailed directly into the heart of the tempest, learning to navigate the fire of anger, the fog of fear, and the golden chains of attachment. Our journey took us even deeper, beyond simply managing the waves, to understanding the very nature of the water itself. We saw its constant, flowing impermanence, its profound lack of a separate self, its intricate, interconnected web, and its vast, open, empty nature. And in that ultimate seeing, we discovered the highest potential of the sailor, to not only find peace for oneself, but to become a lighthouse for all others, an embodiment of the Bodhisattva's compassionate heart, radiating loving kindness like the sun. We have returned to the harbor, and our vessel is not the same. It is stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And we have returned with the journey's greatest treasure, a single, profound realization. Peace is not a distant island. It is not a calm sea or a life free from trouble. Peace is not the absence of the storm. Peace is the mastery of the storm. It is a skill cultivated within the heart, a strength forged in the mind, a way of being that we can access right here, right now, no matter what the weather may be. It is the immovable stability within you. This path, this journey of awakening, is not reserved for special people in ancient times or faraway lands. It is your birthright. The tools are in your hands. The capacity for profound peace is already within you, waiting to be uncovered. The entire grand voyage, with all its philosophy and practice, begins with a single, simple step. It begins where you are, in this very moment. The journey of 1,000 miles across the ocean begins right here, with the feeling of your very next breath.